Evening, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Good evening, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, November 1st of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. I'd like to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ryan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will take attendance. Brian Moore,
Here.
Wendy Ann Fowler,
Here.
Louise Sheedy,
Here.
Marcia Putz,
Here.
and I'm Tracy Carver. I'll note that we have a quorum. And we will move into our regular meeting minutes. Our public hearing does not start till 6:45, so just give us a couple minutes. We're gonna move into item 4B. This commission discussion decision regarding application IW 23-09 for proposed new construction for a single family home within the 100-foot upland review area to be located at 139 Mill Street, and the applicant is Lucia Campos.
Her engineer is here on the line,
Okay.
Jim Jones.
I think he is still connecting.
Okay, so we'll start Jim. Jim Stewart and I went out to the property, looked at the wetlands in the very front of the property. Did you get those pictures? Jim has pictures to show. I wrote up this report. I sent it to him today. I'm not sure if he had received it or not, but there's still a few items that we need from them. The wetlands delineation report from the soil scientist. They're marked out on, they're depicted on the site plan, but they're not. We don't have a report from him. We need a note on the plans is what will be removed from the wetland area. Right now, it's currently filled with stumps, wood chips, and rocks. It doesn't look like it's a very significant area. Here it is right here on the screen.
That's what needs to be removed. That's it.
That's where the little wetlands area is. Right in front of you is Mill Street. Directly across the street is Bomber Pond.
Okay.
And there's a view looking up towards the rest of the lot, away from the wetland.
So what we're also asking is the number of cubic yards of fill being brought onto the property. They do need to bring a little bit on to flatten it out a little.
There's a close-up of what the wetlands are filled with.
How big is the parcel?
It is. Thirty thousand, so. 30,000 square feet. We're asking them to clarify what is to be done with all the stone cobbles that's shown on the plans. Are there any deck steps, walkways, patios being proposed? Right now, they just show the house and the driveway. The statewide inland wetlands and watercourse activity reporting form, the second part needs to be completed. And then we're also recommending putting hay bales in addition to the silt fence along the western border of the property. So, did Jim Jones, was he able to connect?
He is able, he's able to speak.
Jim, did you receive my email this afternoon?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
You could just.
All right, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but yes, I just received it this afternoon. And I noticed that you didn't have the soil scientist report. I apologize for that. The applicant was supposed to drop that off when she put the application in. So I have sent that to you. I sent that to you right after you sent me the email today. Items that you're talking about there, very little fill is going to come into that site, if any at all. And the cobbles will probably have to be removed off-site. What were the other questions here? Let me look.
Is there gonna be any decks, walkways, patios? Right now, all you see is
At this time, the owner hasn't indicated that there will be, so I'm not positive on that, and she's not available to talk to. She works evenings. We can look into that. If there was gonna be a deck, I would assume it'd be off the back on the right-hand side. That's where they normally would be on a raised ranch like this.
Let's show that.
Yeah, we're asking them to show that on the plans if it would be there. Since the whole property, the whole construction is within the upland review area. We're also asking that the statewide inland wetlands and watercourse activity reporting form be filled out.
Okay,
And we're recommending putting the hay bales in addition to the silt fence along the western border of the property.
yeah, that's not a problem.
There's no fill being brought on, or you're not sure yet?
Say that again?
The fill, were you bringing any fill in or?
No, I mean, it's almost a balance. I mean, you know, if they brought in any, it'd be a couple of truckloads, that would be it. I mean, what we've done is we've designed it so that the driveway on the left-hand side, they're gonna drive flat into the basement at that point. And then it'll be dug into the hillside as it goes to the right. So there's not gonna be much fill brought in. There probably will be some fill taken out.
I mean, how deep are those rocks?
Say that again?
How deep are all those cobbles? Some of them are very large.
I don't know that. I mean, they could be buried on site. They're not really in a spot that, you know, that's gonna be a big deal for the house. Let me see here, where's the map? Yeah, house is right in the middle of it. But yeah, I mean, they'd have to take out what was in the way there and remove them from the site.
Yeah, just make sure you clarify that on the plan. What's the
Yeah, we
plan?
could do that. We'll put a note in there saying something like,
Couldn't have a
cobbles to
backyard.
be removed, cobbles to be removed from site.
And what about the, we've like noted on the plans as to what will be removed from the wetland area, that small wetland area in the front, right now it's filled with stumps, wood chips, rocks. What was
We hadn't planned on touching it at all. I mean, is that something that you would like to see cleaned up? Is that what you're getting at?
the stumps and the, I mean, the rocks are okay, but not the stumps and the wood chips.
There's actually stumps and wood chips in that, huh? I haven't been there since they cleared it a little, so. We could clear this wood chips out of there. That'd have to be done carefully not to disturb the soil. I don't know if you want the stumps pulled out, being that it's in the wetlands.
Well, they're not like in the ground, they're just laying on top. We can send you.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah, they could get that. We could clean up that.
We could send you the photos that we have.
Yeah, I actually have some myself. My son was out there recently. But yes, sending them to me would be good. You want a note on there to say that the wetlands area is to be cleared of stumps and
debris.
mulch,
Mhm.
debris.
Yep, and then if you could, calculate approximately what the cubic yards are,
What's being removed?
that's being
I'll
removed.
calculate them, but I can tell you there's really not anything going in. It's gonna be coming out, if anything.
Okay, and then when you resubmit that, site plan, you can also put the additional hay bales along the silt fence. to keep
Yes,
that
I'll
site-
go through this. I'll go through this whole list that was sent here and we'll deal with all of this, you know, for the final plan.
Okay. Okay, so then we could continue this to next.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, we have incomplete plans or nothing we can really discuss tonight, so let's get those plans up for what, you know, answer those questions you had, and we can look at it again next month.
Okay.
Then.
When is
Thank
the meeting next month? I'm away.
Hold on, I got the date. It's, December 6th,
6th. Is that
correct?
what you said? 6th,
Yes, Wednesday, December 6th.
the day before I come home, but I should be still, I'll still be here, so I can deal with it again, from Zoom.
Okay.
When
When you get those plans, you could send them over to us before the meeting and then we'll review that.
Yeah, I'll get those within the next week so that you'll have them.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, I thank you, everybody.
It's your company, man. Mhm.
I could steal them. I have.
Okay.
We're good? All right. All right, it was 6:49. I apologize for being a little late. We'll go into our public hearing and just some housekeeping. You know, please try to refrain from shouting out. If you'd like to speak, please do. You know, we are here to respect each other. We take what you have to say to our hearts. We understand your position, you know, but please keep it to a minimum. And also please just concentrate on anything that's a wetland issue. Anything with zoning, there's really nothing for us to, we can't really do anything. Just keep it to the wetlands. I do have some items here, so just to let you guys know, we did receive, the report from B&L Company on their peer review. We received that recently. It was dated October 30th. We have to review that. We also received, from Southwest Conservation District on October 31st, their review of the plans. We would need to read that. We also have received a request for legal intervener status pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 22A-19 from Chester Cornacchia. And we also have several emails and letters from the public, and I'm just gonna go over, we're not gonna read them into the meeting minutes, but it is part of the file, so anybody that wants a copy of them, please contact Lori in her office, and she'll be more than happy to get that for you. I have a letter from Gil Kirby opposing the plan, a letter from James Everett, Patricia Everett, and Jamie Everett opposing the plan. A letter from Leonard Yanelli opposing the plan. A letter from Samuel Landsman opposing the plan. One from Christina Gordon opposing the plan. One from Thomas and Kathleen Nelson opposing the plan. Jeffrey Doy opposing the plan. Jennifer Sultanis opposing the plan. Cindy Rivera opposing the plan. I think that's it, that's your son. Dondo Silvestre, apologize, opposing the plan. What my names, more, they're all stapled together. Rosemary McLennan opposing the plan, and two of them from Rosemary. I think they're the same one.
It's the same one, they just came in different times.
Oh, okay, so same one, yeah, same letter. Dated different, they're same day, different timestamps on that. So we have that, all opposing.
Can I also note, Tracy, that those are also all online, if anybody cared to read them?
Thank you. And it looks like we also have a revised site plan with the building markouts dated October 30th.
Not a resite, it's just where they mark the corners of the
The
buildings,
corners of the buildings, got it.
the little red X's. The same site plan, they just were able to mark the corners.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand, there's only certain corners that are marked and not all corners, it's what, I don't understand.
Those were the ones they could get to. We went out yesterday.
Oh, they're
yesterday.
state corners of the
They're state.
building.
Oh, okay, they're
Oh, okay,
in the field.
in the correct,
Okay.
okay, thank you, thank you for that clarification. All right, and do we have a sign-up sheet of people that would like to speak? I think we have that.
There is a sign-up sheet that's on this desk here
Okay.
that is for people when they would like to speak at that time. And Tracy, we will have the people speak here first before we go to anyone on Zoom.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I'd like to start with the interveners, the intervener here.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Please come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Hi, Chester, is this thing working?
It was on.
Was on?
No.
No.
And also for the record, Attorney Fred Lukecki on behalf of Mr. Carnaccia and various residents who consist of the Westover Hills subdivision. And personally, on my own behalf, as a resident of Naugatuck, Connecticut at 33 Michael Lane, Naugatuck, Connecticut. I collaborated with Mr. Carnaccia on presenting the request for intervener in the legally proper way. I'll let Mr. Carnaccia make any comments that he wishes to make, and I'll follow suit.
Thank
If I
you.
may. Thank you.
So it's Chester Cornacchia, 53 Graham Ridge Road.
You could actually press the speaker on one of that below you. And turn, if that doesn't work, turn the last,
Here?
yeah, and then you have to hit the on button. Correct.
Hello, man.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okey-dokey. So 53 Graham Ridge Road in Naugatuck.
And
Madam Chairman, if I may, I'm more familiar with the statutory requirements for achieving intervention status. Under the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act and also under the Environmental Protection Act, intervention is allowed to have concerned parties transmit information that is relevant to the subject matter. The statute requires a verified pleading, which basically is someone would be willing to swear to penalties of perjury to the best of his information, knowledge, and belief that there would be a significant impact on wetlands, watercourses, and/or natural resources that are within the jurisdiction of this commission. We believe that we stated facts sufficient to meet that standard. I did give a courtesy copy in advance to Attorney Fitzpatrick, and I'm hoping to get an opportunity to review the contents of the intervener request and perhaps could advise the commission on what he would advise.
thank you.
Yeah, so I, for the record, Ned Fitzpatrick, counsel to the commission. I've reviewed the petition, under the statute, the petitioner has the right that the commission should first of all acknowledge the receipt already of the petition. And I think it's, the burden of proof is on the intervener to show that the project will cause unreasonable pollution or harm to wetlands and watercourses. So with that, I would anticipate that there would be some testimony or evidence provided by the intervener and or its experts. And I suppose, Madam Chair, that time probably start about now.
So, yeah,
With that being said, counsel, we have a professional engineer with a multitude of disciplinary subject matter expertise. And I'd like to introduce to the commission and to staff and to everyone here, Mr. Stephen Curtis.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Trinkus. I'm a professional engineer with an office at Southbury, Connecticut. And I was asked to just take a preliminary review of the site plans. It's not a detailed engineering review of site design, stormwater management, et cetera, but some basic issues. We know from neighbors that live nearby that this site, especially along the Webb Avenue side, was subject to the placement of shredded rubber from Uniroyal many years ago. It was used by a nursery with the idea of mixing the rubber in with soil, would hold more water and allow their plants to, grow better. But most of the development is proposed in the areas where this rubber material still exists. The problem with shredded rubber is when it's exposed to the air, several things happen to it. It decomposes, releasing one volatile organic carbon compounds, VOCs, to the air. But it also releases heavy metals that were used in the making of rubber. Heavy metals are migratory in water. And as these upland areas are directly uphill of the central wetland with Long Meadow Brook in the middle of it, they clearly pose a risk to the wetlands on this site. The main problem is we have no idea where and the extent of this rubber spill is. There really should be not only a phase 1 environmental assessment done, and I'm not an LEP, I'll say that right up front, which is a licensed environmental professional, but doing land use for 4 years, I know what my clients do when they look at land. And if there's any question, they do a phase 1, which identifies potential environmental risks. If risks are found, then the next step is a phase 2, which can involve soil borings, water testing, excavation of test pits to identify what materials and where they are on the site. As this material is likely remaining on the site right now, and these buildings will have underbuilding parking, you'll be excavating into this material, there's all kinds of environmental risks, none of which can be quantified at this time. So the main issue here is doing a full environmental assessment to know where this material is and to develop, quite honestly, a plan for removal of the material from the site before any development takes place in this area. You'll also hear from one of the attorneys about some feasible and proven alternatives, but I looked at the proposed, I think there's 3 or 4 wetland crossings on the site. And there are no alternative plans for these various crossings, and some of them are fairly significant. Some have a culvert, some have a box culvert, one has a bridge. But the box culvert and the standard culvert, there are no alternatives presented that would minimize wetland impacts. And as this is a public hearing, those alternatives are mandated by law when you decide to hold a public hearing. Lastly, what we did was we took the applicant's map by SLR, the existing conditions plan, and we put it into AutoCAD, tracing the boundary to scale and also the wetlands line. We then took the plan from NOK, which was a 5-lot subdivision back in 2006 on the other side of the property along Rubber Avenue, and we overlaid that wetland boundary. While the boundary was fairly consistent for most of it, there were 2 areas. The NOK boundary was substantially larger than the SLR plan. I have not gone through the BL report in great detail, only having gotten it yesterday, but I think that's an issue that you might want to ask your consultant to investigate, because there was a clear substantial enlargement on the NOK plan from 06. And it would likely greatly impact one of the buildings that's proposed along that side of the site. But the main concern here is the buried rubber material on this site, because the environmental harm that can occur when it's disturbed can be pretty significant, particularly as the aquifer, this is an aquifer protection area, and many of the neighbors around the site are on wells. So you don't want to introduce any types of pollutants into the shallow groundwater that might get down to the deeper aquifer area and possibly be drawn up by the residential wells. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep that, you understand. Is there anything else?
Yes, Madam Chairman, one if I may. Just by way of background, although many people in this room know me as a resident, as an attorney in Naugatuck, to be quite frank, land use purposely has not been an area of my recent domain. Mostly because I really didn't enjoy these late nights that all you people volunteer and work for the staff have to contend. And my wife gave me the nudge, like, honey, why don't you do consulting, but not go to the late night meetings? I trust you, but I don't like you being out so late. So when I decided to take on the responsibility of representing properly Mr. Kranacek and a number of folks in this room. I had to dust off some of the knowledge I previously had in the land use area, and I was a specialist in wetlands regulation, both state and Army Corps of Engineers. The fortunate thing, and let me just say that I am not anti-development. In my practice, I represented developers, opposition groups, and I was legal advisor at one point to the Naugatuck Wetlands Commission, also the Prospect Wetlands Commission, and the Litchfield Wetlands Commission. I was very active in that practice. I enjoyed it tremendously, especially the environmental land use regulation. And I have testified as an expert in a Superior Court matter on environmental wetlands regulation, both federal and state. So, but coming up to speed, so to speak, I had to get upgraded on recent cases. And the fortunate thing is the trend line is very consistent. The wetland statutes, when they were enacted back in the early 70s, were very robust, if you will. And I would always tell clients who I represented in development proposals that, listen, if you don't get through wetlands, it doesn't matter whether you get through zoning, planning, and those other commissions. So, and that's because the wetlands regulations were enacted because a very, very prominent purpose and in the public interest is to protect wetlands, which tie into water courses and streams and also natural resources. So I did have to brush up on some of the variables that pertain to intervention status. And I just want to note for the record, I'm just going to take respectful issue with the comment that Attorney Fitzpatrick made that we have to prove that there is potential harm. There's a Supreme Court case that actually says you just have to have a reasonable basis and swear that you believe that there is irreparable harm or some harm to wetlands, water courses, or natural resources. And I can cite the case, and I'm sorry that I didn't have a chance to collaborate on this point, but it's, and incidentally, I understand that all of you now have in possession a treatise on what's legally required in the land use area, including wetlands. It was prepared by an environmental scientist, Mike Ziska, who turned into an environmental lawyer. It's extremely informative, very well written. It's in plain language terms. And many attorneys now informally use his guidebook as a quick reference to find cases and points they want to make. So if you just give me a moment, because I wasn't sure what the physicality was here, and I was anticipating having a table where I could spread things out. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'm going to. So according to this treatise, the intervener does not have to prove the allegations to become a party. He or she must only make allegations in a verified pleading, which is a sworn statement. And that is supported by the Supreme Court case called Rizzardo versus State Traffic Commission, 259 Connecticut 131. It's a 2002 case. So that's the only point I want to make in the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just so the record's clear, just the record's clear, an application for a petition for intervention is permitted by statute and is generally accepted from any party. The burden of proving those allegations is on the intervener, and that's what I said, the burden of proving the allegations, not it does, you have standing in your application, your petition is accepted by the commission as an intervention petition. But, and I'll be happy to give counsel the case, which indicates that the burden of proving the unreasonable harm rests with, and I'll be happy to discuss that with counsel and anybody else that wishes to, but I want to make sure that the record is clear that the court has ruled very clearly that that is a burden. And it doesn't mean that the petition is invalid. The petition has already been accepted and noted for the record by the commission. So the intervention status is you establish that by filing your petition. There are a few other comments I have about some of the parties. I only see one verified name in the petition. If you wish to file, if there wish to be other parties to the petition, then their name should be also verified. The petition should be expanded to include other parties, if that's what's intended. And that, I'm not sure the public hearing will close this evening, likely not. So there is time, there's time for the petitioner to do that if they wish to do that. And it doesn't have to be, sounds like it won't, the public hearing won't close it either. So your intervention application can be made at any time.
So, Chairman Fitzpatrick, thank you for clarifying. I must have misunderstood the point. I thought the intervener status was not being granted,
I'm sorry.
and that's not true. So I misunderstood your comment. I apologize.
No worries.
And
It's not the first time, right?
it is.
It's all good.
So
I'll find
the point about referring to the various residents, Mr. Kanacha, as well as a few others, have been very, very active, and others have been less active, but very active. They have formed an association of concerned citizens, so I refer to them as a group of residents concerned as an association. They're not necessarily incorporated, but they have formed a de facto non-profit, non-corporate association. If you would like the individual members all to come forward, in written form, we can do that too. But we wanted to say, Mr. Konachik and those members of that association who are homeowners at Westover Hills. So we'd like the association to be recognized with the same rights as Mr. Konachia individually.
I'll be happy to discuss that with council.
Okay. It's perhaps, it's not an everyday approach.
I'm familiar with the process, but I think we should have a discussion later. There's a solution here, easy solution.
So we're satisfied that the miscommunication is on my fault. I apologize, and the intervener status is very important because this gives us the same kind of opportunities and rights as the applicant as we go forward in this process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before we go forward, can everybody hear? I just want to make sure they can hear. No? Okay. You can, my buttons.
All right.
You can hear me though, right? All right. Okay, can we get the next speakers? I don't know who's on the list.
Are you
Wait,
doing
are we gonna have the,
presentation?
Well, I think, is the applicant here too?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so now let's
okay,
get the
let
applicant. How about the applicant? Go?
If you'd like to speak, please just, put your name on the list and we'll get to you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cormier. I'm the owner of the apartments at Long Meadow LLC, the applicant for the subject, number 2308, regarding the proposed development of Long Meadow apartments located on multiple parcels that I own between Rubber Avenue and Webb Road. It's a privilege to address you this evening to explain our plan for the development of the subject property, specifically how components of that plan, carefully designed and engineered, account for the unique ecosystem that currently exists and will continue to exist undisturbed, and most importantly, how our plan substantially meets the borough's inland wetland regulations. As I discussed at the initial meeting when I submitted the application, the thrust of our plan is to assist the borough by demonstrating that it can adhere to the state of Connecticut's legal requirement that it comport with a minimum percentage of workforce housing. There continues to be a false narrative throughout Connecticut communities with respect to the meaning of workforce housing, or as some refer, affordable housing. Allow me to dismiss some of these myths. Workforce housing was not created for the more affluent, nor was it for the least empowered or the poorest in the communities. The optic for what workforce housing really is can be seen by many residents if you simply look in the mirror. It was created and designed for hardworking, dedicated professionals that have defined the borough since its incorporation. These individuals include members of our police, fire, and hospital communities. They include contractors, school teachers, they include retirees. These individuals include, they also include veterans. Sadly, up to now, private development generally passed over this group in exchange for profit. Connecticut law now accounts for that type of development breed that was ignored by these groups. And this plan assures the state of Connecticut that the borough is legally incorporating these people who have long been taken for granted. I would like to dismiss any rumors or discussions that the borough of Naugatuck is pushing me to put through this application. I'm simply trying to comply with the state of Connecticut's requirement that municipalities maintain 10% of their housing as affordable. I and I alone made this proposal. I initiated the discussions with the different borough officials, their staff, my engineers, and my architect. During these working sessions, various participants offered valuable advice and guidance, which resulted in changes to the initial plan that I presented. Changes were made, thoughtfully considered, and the development plan evolved several times. Now we have the plan in front of us that we've all put together after many hours of research. Now, with regard to the application, subject to your approval, we're confident that our application preserves the natural wetlands and water courses endemic to the property. We believe that it honors the sanctity of the adjoining properties. We understand the importance of the best management practices pursuant to DEEP regulations. We certainly agree that any application must be subject to all public and private rights. We believe in not having any negative impact on the environmental features of the property for one very good reason. The overall plan makes the wetlands and water courses the centerpiece of this development. I would also like to remind all present that there was an approval of the development on the site in 2006 by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission that did address the two northern direct wetlands disturbances on the map. At that time, the rubber issue was addressed. There was a full environmental report done. There was a remediation plan incorporated that this commission reviewed and approved based upon their full investigation. I have all that information available.
Excuse me, Mr. Cormier, could you make that information available to the commission?
Yes, I can.
Has it been made available?
It was done in 2006, but I can resubmit it. It was all done part of the original schedule.
You think we should have it?
I think we should
have
have.
it.
It was performed by Delta Environmental.
We-
It was performed by Delta Environmental. I can resubmit it if you want tomorrow.
Well, I think it's.
Narrative, none of us have seen
I
it.
think it's may have potential important information.
Yeah, it does. And it identifies the type of rubber, the metal rubber, where it's located, and that it will be removed. That was all addressed.
All right, especially since it was raised by the intervener. I think
Yeah.
it's, and the intervener is the engineer. I think it's something that should be supplied to the commission and made available to the public, so the public can review it.
Lori, I'll send that to you tomorrow.
May I ask a question regarding that? Would that be in the record then from 2006, did you say? it was
Yes.
done? We should have that
We should have that file,
in the record.
and I think we have a 2006 file
Okay.
that we have online, don't we, the 2006? Well, if we have it, the commission has not seen it.
Yeah, I will get it.
I'll resubmit it anyways, and then you can find your own copy, but I'll make sure you have a copy of it. For
Thank
convenience.
you, appreciate that.
Now, at this point, I'm gonna let my team of tremendously competent and diligent engineers discuss this further. Now, we do all realize that tonight's hearing represents only inland wetlands issues. However, I would like to address the fact that since our last meeting, I have read, I've listened to, and I've had many conversations with a number of people. Many have emailed me, texted me, made phone calls, even stopped at my office to discuss this, looking for clarification and looking at the maps and seeing the renderings of what we're talking about as far as the aesthetics of the buildings that we're talking about building. Because of this interest, I'm very much aware of the concerns that people have on density. And as we move through the process, we're certainly willing to, again, further update our plans if needed and amend them as is most appropriate for the approvals. Now, at this point, I'm pleased to introduce two of my engineers. One of them is on the screen, Megan Raven, who's on the bottom right here corner there. You see the map of our proposed plan in the middle. She's going to discuss the wetlands work. She did all the flagging on the property. And I have Darren Overton here. He's the chief engineer who's been running everything with me here. I'm going to let them summarize the scope of the development and address any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you.
And good evening for the record, Darren Overton from SLR Consulting. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Our offices are at 99 Realty Drive in Chester, Connecticut. As Jim mentioned, Megan Raymond is remote and will be part of the presentation tonight. I'm going to start off by going through the existing conditions plan that is on the screen now. When I go over the orientation and some of the existing condition features that have been submitted as part of the application, I'll then have Megan present her wetland delineation report. Megan is a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist. She'll present the delineation report and her findings from her field work. And then it'll go back to me to present the proposed improvements that have been submitted as part of the site plans. Over the wetland disturbance graphic that we had included in the package, stormwater management, S&E plans, and we do acknowledge that there's been a review letter submitted by BL Companies, also a review letter by Southwest Conservation District. Both of those letters mention alternatives, and we are very aware of what the wetland regulations require as far as alternatives analysis. It was also mentioned tonight. So I do have some alternatives that we will present tonight at the end of this. But I'll start out with the existing conditions. So the property is just under 35 acres, 34.6 acres, according to the survey we conducted. It's made up of 8 parcels. It's in an R30 zone. So for orientation purposes, I believe all, if not most of them have north oriented straight up. So north of the site, which is outlined in yellow on that plan, is Webb Road and existing residential properties. On the south, I'm not sure you can read that label or not, but that's Rubber Ave, which I'm sure most people are familiar with that road very, very much. And other existing residential development. And then east and west is nothing, roads are particular defining features, but there's existing residential development on either side, east and west as well. As was mentioned as part of the presentation tonight, this was previously a nursery or farm property. So the majority of the property has been previously disturbed by farm activities. It's in a state of revegetation right now, it's growing back in. If some of you have been out on the site, you realize how thick some of that vegetation has grown in due to lack of mowing or any maintenance of the property recently. The topography is generally sloping in the south and easterly portion. You can see the light gray in the middle area or light brown. That's really a broad, flat floodplain associated with Long Meadow Pond Brook. So that area of the site is very flat, very gentle grades. As you move up to the north towards Webb Road, there's a slope that goes up to Webb Road, also on the west side, slope going up along the property lines. And then to a certain extent, there's a small rise to the south as well on part of the property headed towards Rubber Avenue. But all along the southern property line is relatively flat. For orientation purposes, as far as elevation, the highest point on the site is elevation 440, and that's at kind of the north central location on Webb Road, and then the low point is along Long Meadow Pond Brook at an elevation 376. So not a large amount of grade change over this 34.6 acre site, but there are some steep slopes that we've recognized on it. There's a wetlands corridor that delineated. The wetlands are in gray on that plan. It's a pretty extensive corridor along Long Meadow Brook associated with that floodplain. There's also an offsite tributary. On that plan in red are existing sanitary sewer easements where there are sanitary sewer mains that run through those easements. That one extending up to the northwest, there's also a stream corridor that enters from the north. There's a 48-inch cross culvert under Webb Road that allows that to pass under the road and into the site, eventually meeting up with Long Meadow Brook in the central portion of the site. We did have reviewed the FEMA mapping associated with this property. Long Meadow Pond Brook does have an established floodplain and it's mapped by FEMA. There's a 500-year floodplain. that's listed, a 100-year floodplain, which is the regulatory floodplain. And then there's also a floodway associated with the corridor of the stream itself. And those are all depicted on the plans. So at this point, that covers all of the, the floodplains on there are delineated in the light blue, the cyan color there. So the one interior one is the 100-year, the outer one is the 500-year. So at this point, that's everything I have as far as listed conditions. I'd like to have Megan now present her soil delineation wetland work.
Great. Thank you so much, Darren. Can everyone hear me? My name is great. Good evening. My name is Megan Raymond. I'm a professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist and certified floodplain manager with SLR. And I work out of our New Haven office at 195 Church Street. And as Darren described, we were out on the site this summer and delineated wetlands on the property. The site is just under 35 acres, as Darren described, 34.6, and the inland wetlands and watercourse resources that we flagged occupy about 14.9 acres of the site, which is about 43% of the property. The primary wetland corridor is Long Meadow Pond Brook, and it's about an 8.5-mile watershed that drains to the Naugatuck River. Just a couple miles downstream is the confluence. The flow of the stream is to the east on this site, and the stream corridor itself, the bankful width of Long Meadow Pond Brook is ranging between 35 to 45 feet, and there's some nice meander bends amongst that kind of carry the flow through an emergent floodplain wetland. And the soils at the base or in the river valley or in the brook valley are occupied by alluvial soils, poorly drained alluvial soils. And as you move up the site, topographically, it's pretty interesting from a superficial geology point of view, because you move out of the alluvial floodplain soils into a glacial outwash terrace and then into a glacial till composition up at the upper bounds of the site. So the stream itself is about a little less than a half mile through the property. It's about 2,100 linear feet of flow through the site. There are evidences of manipulation through the site, but with past farming as well as more recent activity. Interestingly, in the upper reaches of the stream, as it enters the property, a portion of the bank of the stream on the northern side of the stream bank is occupied by stone wall. It's just a dry laid stone wall, which is kind of a neat feature. And as you just kind of move through the site as much as you can, given the density of non-native vegetation with the successional state that the property is in, there are some interesting features to note. There are two primary drainage corridors that enter the property from Webb Road. This area to the west is a little bit larger, and it's obviously there's a cross culvert there underneath Webb Road, and the area to the east is a smaller intermittent water course that does kind of there's a lot of that carries ephemeral flow, and there's a lot of flow coming off the hillside. Obviously, we've got some topographic changes just to the north of this. The drumlin rises to about 800 feet. At our site, we're around 400. So there's a big topo change kind of in this valley, and the flow obviously wants to get to the brook, and it does so primarily in that western corridor. The functions and values of this wetland are high. It's a high value wetland in the actual interior of the brook. The tributaries obviously have a function of just conveying flow down to the brook, but the Long Meadow Pond Brook itself is a great floodplain wetland. And then as well as you move through the wetland itself, given the mixed class and the overall size and extent of the area, we would consider that to be a high value wetland, but the primary high value area again is down in the stream corridor. Typical functions would include groundwater discharge recharge, flood flow alteration, sediment toxicant retention, wildlife habitat, sediment shoreline stabilization, those types of features, primarily given that great overbank flooding that it can occur within Long Meadow Pond Brook with the adjacent emergent wetlands to the side. The Long Meadow Pond Brook is a second order stream at this point. I'd like to take a moment though at this point, because that has come up already this evening, and I know that there's a review that went on with BL. This site through the 2006 approval was previously flagged, and we are aware of this flagging when we went out to the property this summer. And this is a figure that depicts can you see this reasonably well? This is a figure that depicts the line that SLR documented this summer in 2023 compared to the wetland line that was done in 2006. And there, in general, the SLR boundary is larger, and overall SLR delineated a little bit more than over an acre more of wetlands on the site than in 06. But there were 2 areas that we did not identify as wetlands in this particular flagging exercise or flagging activity. Yeah. And that consists of a drainage corridor up at Webb Road, right at this location, or it's not even a drainage corridor, it's sort of an isolated feature that came off of Webb Road, a little trough here. And then as well, this little finger that extended off the eastern tributary. And the reasons for that to the west is we looked at this with all the disturbance through the system, and there's quite a bit of disturbance on the site and in the wetlands with the sewer line work. So there's a lot of snarls of non-native vegetation and so forth, very, very thick. And that's in concert with the succession from the farming activity. But there's been a lot of disturbance in through here. We looked at this as primarily stormwater fed and considered it a drainage feature. And then looking at this area here, this is a little pocket with or a little finger with no hydrophytic vegetation, no hydrology. And the soils that we observed, the dominants were not poorly drained. I know that the BL report looked at these areas critically themselves, or looked at these areas and did not agree with us in that location. So we do have a disagreement. We're looking at this now and going to come to some resolution on how the wetland line will be presented on the plans moving forward. But irrespective of the regulatory boundaries of these 2 specific areas, the contribution to wetland functions in these areas, in our opinion, would be low. I mean, we didn't flag them as wetlands. We knew they were there. We looked at them and we decided to move away from that designation. But I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. It's all been very upfront. It was described in our report. And we're happy to kind of look at this with all of you and come to a resolution on that boundary. At this point, that concludes my presentation. I'm going to turn it back to Darren and continue with screen sharing of the presentation. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions at any point during the evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. So the next graphic on the screen is a proposed rendering of the site plan development that was submitted. So what's proposed for the use on the site is residential apartments. There's 467 units that are located in 8 buildings that are shown on the plan. 433 of those units are single bedroom, 34 are 2-bedroom. And then on the bottom of the screen, the south side, there are 2 buildings that are designated for townhouse type of units. As far as parking on the site, we've proposed 695 parking spaces for those units. There's 233 that are in garage spaces, which are located under the buildings, and there's 462 surface spaces proposed. There's 2 proposed access roads connecting to Webb Road. So the proposed roadway and parking is shown gray on that plan, with the buildings kind of a brown or orange. We have 2 roadways out to Webb Road, and then we have a road looping through the site and connecting to the south into Rubber Avenue. The roads are proposed as 24 feet wide. That road width is a standard road width for design. And it's also, we did look at the Kingsmark report. That was a recommendation. Prior application said wider roads. We had followed the Kingsmark recommendation, and we believe the 24-foot wide road is appropriate for the development. Overall, you see there's landscaping. We just showed on the rendering here, kind of the larger trees, shade trees and decorative trees. There's a mix of native shade and ornamental trees, shrubs, meadow grasses, landscape areas. We anticipate there's going to be some mowed lawn around the buildings and the clubhouse. I forgot to mention earlier, there is a clubhouse, a smaller building in the center that will provide for amenities and a pool that is planned for the residents of the development. So the lawn area around the buildings we anticipate is about a 15-foot area around the buildings, and then some of the common spaces will be maintained as lawn. While beyond that, particularly towards the wetlands, there'll be more seeded with a native type of meadow mix where it's disturbed. And then that will be kind of left to vegetate it as a natural area. The entire project is planned to be served by public water and sanitary sewer. There's no public water in the adjacent roadways currently, but there is a water main in Stone Fronts Road that is planned to be extended out down Webb Road and into the property. There's sanitary sewers that exist from that existing conditions plan. If you remember, there were red easements. Those have sanitary sewer trunk mains in them. And in the current plan, we've proposed gravity connections to those trunk lines, and there are wetland impacts associated with that because the majority of the sewer trunk lines that run through the site do run in wetlands. All of the utilities are expected to extend either from Rubber Ave or Webb Road. Those would be electrical, potential gas, communications utilities that will extend into the site underground and serve the proposed units. The water will loop through the site, and there will be fire hydrants that will be located to meet the local fire department requirements for fire protection. So as part of the next slide, Megan, the wetland disturbance, we did detail out wetland disturbances on the site. And on this graphic, the wetlands are highlighted in the light green on there. I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. This is the graphic for the stormwater detention. So the stormwater management on the site, again, the wetlands are in green and we have the stormwater management highlighted in blue. So we have underground storage areas that are associated to provide detention and water quality for the project. There's a pipe and catch basin collection system that collects the surface runoff from roofs of buildings, pavement, roadways, and routes them through water quality chambers. There's, as part of these, there's an isolated row that's established for water quality, and there's water quality storage based on the Connecticut Water Quality Manual. These all overflow by gravity to the adjacent wetlands. There are level spreaders, various level spreaders along the edge of the wetlands that will allow for these to overflow and discharge in a kind of a laminar flow way over land through a vegetated strip and then into the wetlands themselves. And as you can see, the majority of these are located quite some distance away from the actual stream channel themselves. So there will be further vegetative filtering as that flows through the wetland vegetation towards making its way eventually to the stream channels. There are also hydrodynamic separators that are proposed as part of the development. So we have, as far as the treatment train, catch basins with sumps, hydrodynamic separators. We have water quality volume included in the detention basins, and then we have level spreaders with vegetated strips for the overflow out of those stormwater management systems. Go to the next graphic, Megan. So this is a plan that we submitted with some color on it in the plan set to detail out the wetlands on the site, which are in purple, bluish purple on that plan. The yellow is the 100-foot upland review area that this commission recognizes in their regulations. And then the green areas are the areas where we have proposed roadway crossings, which are only direct wetland impacts that are proposed on the plans. So the wetland impacts that we have are essentially unavoidable in order to provide access to the upland areas on the site. So we have the roadways that connect to the adjacent top roads of Webb Road, and also Rubber Avenue, and then right through the site to the developable areas where the buildings are located. There's 3 proposed roadway crossings, and we've located them at the narrowest points of the wetland delineation. As Jim Cormier mentioned earlier, the 2 of them at the northern part of the site are located similarly to a prior application that's come before the commission. And then the 3rd crossing is a bridge crossing that we have proposed across Long Meadow Brook to provide the loop access out to Rubber Avenue. So all told, we have a total direct wetland disturbance of 9,154 square feet shown on those plans. It breaks down further as a permanent impact of 4,070 square feet, where there'd be an actual loss of wetlands for construction of those bridge abutments, the culvert, various culverts, or the roadway itself. There will be temporary impact of about 5,085 square feet. That's associated with the construction area needed to build some of these crossings. It's also associated with the gravity connections of the sanitary sewer, that in order to extend that sewer and actually connect it to the mains on site, we have to connect the laterals through the wetlands to actually get to the main. So there's some temporary impact that there's a restoration and planting that's planned as part of that to restore that area after it's installed. back to its native conditions and allow that to grow back, with wetland vegetation. We also accounted for 1,000 square feet of what we called potential indirect impact. And that was associated with the bridge, recognizing that the bridge is going to extend over the stream. And there could be a potential for tree clearing or other vegetative clearing in order to accommodate the bridge structure. Actually, after specifically looking at that area in the field, it appears that the vegetation is all low vegetation there. And that may not be an impact. There may not be any selective clearing that's necessary to install that bridge. So the indirect impacts would be minimal at best. Go to the next slide, Megan. So we did include an ENS plan as part of this. This graphic is not the ENS plan, but was included in our package. There's approximately 14 acres of total disturbance. There is a deep construction stormwater general permit that we recognize is going to be needed. Should this project be approved, that will need to be filed prior to construction. On our ENS plan, we have designated topsoil stockpile areas, perimeter controls around the limits of disturbance, silt fence and hay bales, particularly along the wetland areas, inlet protection for catch basins, temporary berms and swales that divert water to 4 temporary sediment traps. We have the permanent stormwater basins that are shown here and recommend for use of sediment traps during construction. And then we have erosion control blankets that are proposed on areas where we have 2-to-1 slopes to match it to grade as part of the grading plan. So this graphic that we have here is part of the alternates that I mentioned. I have some copies of these. I'll present these, but I'd like to hand out 6 copies. Laura, I'll give you these. There's a narrative summary, 2-page summary, and then there's half-scale copies of these 2 alternatives I'm going to present.
Madam Chair, to the chair, if I may, just intervene at this time, with the intervener status, we both have to exchange, information that's relevant to the application. So going forward, if you wouldn't mind providing 1 copy to us as well.
I haven't gotten there yet, okay. So Madam Chair, if that's acceptable to you, I do have an extra copy which I can share with you.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
So this first plan represents a prior iteration of the design. We had some larger buildings. We had a different configuration of the buildings themselves. The roadway moving through the site and the connections to Webb Road and to Rubber Avenue are substantially similar. There's one adjustment to that western connection. We switched over to the other side of that corridor. In the lower corner, the southwest area, you'll see there's 2 buildings that are proposed there, and one of them has a direct wetland impact. We modified the plan to go to a single building there and eliminate that wetland impact. You'll also see on the south side, the 2 townhouses. One of them was located further east and had a direct wetland impact, so we made a shift to those and modified the plan in order to avoid that direct wetland impact. And then you'll see there's a couple of the other buildings as the delineation evolved, which in some areas it was larger than the 2006 delineation. There were a few buildings that were relatively close to the wetland corridor itself, particularly the main channel corridor associated with Long Meadow Brook. So we discussed these as we're going through the process with Megan, our professional wetland scientist. She had identified, and as she had testified tonight, that the main stem and the main part of the wetlands associated with Long Meadow Brook, that we should leave a larger buffer to those wetlands, and that the buildings as we proposed should move back. So that's part of the reasoning why we abandoned this development plan and changed and worked with the architect to change the size of some of the buildings and the configuration of the buildings to avoid the direct wetland impacts for the buildings and the parking themselves. So that's how we got to the current plan that shows less wetland disturbance than this alternate. So I'll move to the next plan. The town engineer, Mr. Stewart, had submitted some review comments previously in the process. We reviewed those comments and we provided some responses to those comments and revise the plans associated with that. Those are the plans that were provided to DL for their review and the Southwest Conservation District. As part of that, there was a suggestion that we could lessen the wetland impact on the property by considering pump stations for to serve the buildings as opposed to gravity connections to the gravity mains through the site, through the wetlands. So apologize, it's a little bit hard to read on the screen, but there's pump stations located at each of the buildings other than the townhouses. So there's a green circle with a PS in it, which represents a logical pump station location to serve each building. We've considered that these pump stations could connect to a common force main. So on the west side, we have a group of buildings with connections that would cross the wetlands by gravity. If we installed the pump stations and ran that common force main all the way up to Webb Road and connected that, we show the connection to a manhole, which would be a relatively simple connection, but if we were to move forward with this, we'd work with the engineering department to determine the most appropriate connection, but for alternative purposes, we kept it simple just to show a logical place where they could connect and avoid wetlands. In the central group of 3 buildings there, we have 3 pump stations pumping into a common force main that go up the access road to Webb Road, where we again can connect into a sanitary manhole that's located in Webb Road and avoid that red wetland crossing that's highlighted on the screen. So as we move over to the eastern part of the site, we have 3 buildings there. Those are connected by gravity to what we see is that red linear area over on the east side of the site. So that is an area where, again, to get to that gravity main running through the site, you can see that there's a long line that we would need to excavate and that temporary disturbance that I mentioned to install that connection to the sanitary main. Here we provided in this alternate, again, 3 pump stations, a common force main, where we would again pump up to Webb Road. Now, initially we thought, well, the easiest to just go up the access road and connect, but there's no sewer in that portion of Webb Road. So we brought it up the west side of the buildings, and there would be some upland review area impact and some impact to that slope to make that connection into the gravity manhole in Webb Road. But this was just an option. We wanted to explore the alternative since it was suggested. And this would result in an elimination of some, but not all, of the temporary impact associated with those gravity sewer connections that are proposed on the plans currently. So the last thing I'd like to mention is the culverts. It was mentioned that there were no alternatives submitted for the culverts. I don't have a graphic for those. We could detail that out in more, but I did provide a narrative regarding that. So I'll start with the bridge on the south side. We could have proposed more impact there, put some sort of culvert in. Really not an appropriate design for that, recognizing that there's an upstream bridge at Rubber Ave. There's also another downstream bridge. It's pretty obvious that a bridge was the best approach here, and that's what we designed. We looked at the floodplain and the floodway. We did not want to encroach on the floodway, although there's some variation in the line there in the FEMA mapping where it doesn't really follow the channel itself. But we provided a bridge that's wide enough to span the floodway that's shown on the FEMA map. And we pushed those abutments out beyond that, avoided direct wetland impact. So it spans the whole channel itself, it spans the floodway. And then we have abutments on either side. There is some direct wetland impact to the abutments in the roadway. And we also accounted for some temporary disturbance for construction of that bridge. So we believe, again, we have the most feasible and prudent alternative with a proposed bridge there. So moving to the next crossing in the northwest corner, near Webb Road. That's the stream corridor that comes in from the northwest where there's a 48-inch pipe under Webb Road. We have proposed a box culvert there. We could have proposed a 48-inch pipe similar to what is under Webb Road, but instead we worked with Megan, our professional wetland scientist, to understand that there is a natural stream bed there that has some width. There's natural overbanks there. And we proposed to put in a box culvert that would meet the Army Corps width and openness ratio standards. We also oversized the height of that box culvert so that the concrete bottom of it could be buried below the stream bed, and the natural stream bed could be restored through the box culvert itself. So essentially we would have, again, a temporary impact for installation of it, but we would restore the natural stream channel and have minimal impact on that actual stream. And the size of the box culvert's been sized to pass the proper storm through there. And again, allow for minimal impact on the stream itself, which, as Megan had mentioned, the primary function and value there of that wetland channel is to convey stormwater flows. So then the last crossing, further to the east, is a wetland, small wetland, hillside wetland that has a kind of a channel that's in it. There's a very limited watershed on site associated with that. There's no off-site watershed that comes into that channel. So it's a very low amount of runoff through there. We did propose that as a pipe. It's not something that we feel needs any sort of a larger scale box culvert. In fact, if we were to put a box culvert in there, it'd be so small, it basically look like a pipe to convey the flow that's necessary. So we proposed the pipe. We did not identify it in the field, but we understand from reading some of the historical documentation, I think part of that was in the Kingsmark report, that there is an old culvert across that channel somewhere that was used as part of the farm roads. So what we designed is a pipe that's similar to some kind of historic use. And again, we believe what we've designed here is the most feasible and prudent alternative. If the commission feels that they need more documentation or graphics to represent what I've presented here and what I've provided in the narrative, we're happy to do that.
Darren, can I ask a question with this?
Sure.
It looks like two of the same. It looks like the plans are two of the same. What? I don't know if you have the correct stuff.
I have two of the same page. and I
Two of the-
swapped with
I think
Mark.
some of that's stapled wrong,
Wrong,
right?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So make sure, yeah, look on, you should have all one and all
There's a
two.
one and a two.
Yeah, I have two out one. Okay.
We'll two all one.
correct it.
Yeah, two, so let's swap. And then you probably have to, what do you got? Two and two? Okay, so Lori, then you got one. Okay. Swap. There we go.
You do, Frankie, do you have two interveners? Do you
Your
have all
plans.
one and all two?
Thank you. Go on to make it the group goal.
Got it.
You have two twos, or you have a one and a two?
This one has a one and two.
Okay, perfect. You're good.
Everybody's got a one and a two, right?
We're good.
And then we did 3 and 4, we're all good. These alternate plans are taking into consideration the same number of units, the same, I guess, number of parking spaces and everything else.
Yes, so at this point, we're documenting some of the design process, some of the alternates that we considered in moving forward to get to the plan that's been presented to the commission. Also recognizing the comment from the town engineer. I'm not saying that these are the only alternatives that were presented as part of this process. To date, based on the plans that are submitted, this basically documents what we've considered at this point. So we'd be happy to hear more feedback from the commission or others as to whether there's other alternatives that we should consider. And we certainly have the review comments from BL as well as the Southwest Conservation District that while I've read through them, not prepared at all to respond to those tonight. There's other considerations in there that we need to think through, and there could be other alternatives that come from those recommendations from our reviewers. As well as we had now had interveners in the process, so I'm sure they might recommend a few themselves. Spot on. So that's all I have for our presentation at this point. Happy to address any questions the commission may have.
I just want to let everybody know that we did receive the verified mailings that the butters were noticed within 50 feet of the project.
This will be part of the record.
And Middlebury was also noticed. I sent a notice to Middlebury. I'm sure the applicant did too.
I can pretty sure you see.
If I can get those green cards later from you. Or cards. Tracy, you want me to hold those things?
Great.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will first defer to the commission for any questions that they would like to ask, like the engineer. I'll respectfully wait for you to exhaust your questions, and I will then ask the engineer questions. Okay.
Right. Commissioners have any questions? Here, not at this time, not at this time. Go ahead.
So. You may want to answer some of my questions on why. Maybe both of us can speak loudly, so you may not even need the microphone.
Well, we
maybe-
so we can record, hold on.
One person at a time.
So, and I apologize, sir, is it Mr. Osborne? I apologize. Overton, excuse me. So, I have a number of questions, and yes, predictably, the intervener group does have a feasible prudent alternative following the legal standards that are contained in the statutes and the borough regulations. So I just have some observations by your presentation, and sir, I realize you're a highly skilled engineer, you're an advocate for the applicant, and that's to be recognized, and you did a very skillful job. I similarly read the King's Mark report and the related Southwest report that goes back to 2006. And I remember some of the bullet points without pointing the exact page. First of all, you had mentioned you did a favorable thing by shrinking the road from the normal 30 feet to 24, and that is certainly a good environmentally sensitive move. But there are other features to the King's Mark report that are very firmly imbued in my mind because I've read it multiple times, including the Southwest report. King's Mark and or Southwest recommended on this site, given its extensive wetlands, watercourses, and natural resources that are regulated by this commission of statutes, a maximum density of 2 units, approximately 2.1 per acre. The density that is being proposed here is almost 14 units per acre. In all the days.
No.
In all the days that I've represented developers, even in city environments, I've never seen such an ultra dense proposal. And this is an environmentally sensitive property. Just to give you a little history, I did know a little bit about this site before it was even presented, because one of the developers in the past, Mr. Roger Spinelli, had a partner who was a client of mine. And from time to time, they would consult with me, and I would look at the different plans and like, oh my word, there's quite a wetlands community here and floodplain. And so by osmosis, I know a lot about this site just from previous discussions. So in your discussion, lawyers do the same thing. They're very careful with the use of their words. And you, sir, kept on saying the disturbance of wetlands, never giving any discussion of the disturbance of the 100-foot regulated area. Now, the wetland statute was first enacted in the early 1970s. Shortly after enacting a very famous Supreme Court case, Connecticut Supreme Court case, referred to as the Aaron case, justified a wetlands commission having buffer zones up to 200 feet outside of the wetlands. And because, as the soil scientists rightfully noted, some wetlands have very high functional values. Usually the wetlands that are close to, that are watershed to streams, rivers, freshwater ponds, they have multiple high functioning attributes. The retention of phosphates and nitrates, which tend to cause downstream pollution. When you have phosphorus and nitrates going downstream to watercourses, it causes what we call eutrophication. That's why some ponds become very weedy, because they're becoming too nutrient rich. Wetlands do a great job of retaining those phosphates and nitrates. They're high functional value, and they rely to a great degree on those high groundwater soils like Sutton, Charlton, etc. They're right next to the wetlands. Working together, they protect the downstream watercourses. So though that is why the Supreme Court in that Aaron case said, geez, anything by watercourses, it's understandable that there should be a regulated area that transcends way beyond the 50 feet that was initially enacted in 1972. So shortly after that Aaron case, there were major amendments in 1987 to the Wetlands Act, basically justifying up to 200 feet. So the DEP, that was the name of the Environmental Protection Agency at that time, recommended to the state legislature that at least 100 feet should be sanctioned by statute. And that occurred. And it's in fact the DEEP's position that every municipality should have a regulated area of at least 100 feet outside of the wetlands, because what you do within 100 feet of the wetlands can have a migrating effect, and a lot of the case law also confirms that. So a lot of discussion that you had, sir, was the direct intrusion of wetlands, but there was a tremendous, on one map, it shows a lot of footprints of large buildings, and obviously therefore the grading around those buildings that are in the regulated area. So this discussion should not be just what's directly hitting a wetlands, but the regulated area. Okay, so let's be clear about that. And so on a number of occasions, you said feasible and prudent alternative. And most of the discussions did not focus on, geez, can we do a much lower density, perhaps subdivision, or some other alternative, clustering far away from the regulated areas? Most of your discussion was, do we do a culvert or a viaduct, or you didn't say viaduct, a bridge? And those were just alternative construction techniques, some of them being better for the environment than others. But if you understand the law, okay, the very, very start of the analysis is, can you do something with this site and completely avoid hitting any of the regulated areas, which would be wetlands and 100 feet? I've heard none of that discussion, no maps, and I am prepared to then introduce to this commission a feasible and prudent alternative to the very nature of how you're going to develop this site. Now, I'm a local kid, or man at this point, I guess, and historically, the most restrictive residential zoning in Naugatuck has been the west side. And that was for various reasons. So this particular area is an R30. And it's partially in recognition that for years we didn't have sewer in that area. They tend to be the more environmentally sensitive areas. And so therefore, if a developer is going to come in and decide to cut this up in pieces in a subdivision, at least it'll be low density and less impactful on the wetlands, watercourses, natural resources. So I took a look at some of the proposals that did occur back in 2006, etc. And I'm going to introduce, and of course, I'm going to provide you with a copy because it goes both ways as far as applicant and intervener. We have to share information.
Thank you.
So one map that I'm going to present to the commission is an approved subdivision called Willow Ridge. And it was not for the entire piece, but a very substantial amount of land associated with this 35 acres. I want to say about 15. And they did clearly meet the legal standard of no feasible and prudent alternative, because what they did was all frontage lots with no infrastructure at all done. So frontage lots, individual homeowners will build wherever they're allowed to build by the Wetlands Commission. But the very core of the proposal before this commission and then later the Planning Commission was, we'd like to take this 15 acres and just nicely cut them into large size lots all frontage, no roads, no disturbance of buffer areas, no bridges, no culverts, nothing. And properly understood, backed up by statutes and the Connecticut Supreme Court, avoiding wetlands, if feasible, improved, if it's possible, is an alternative that must be considered. So, in that connection, I would now like to present that subdivision. Madam Chair, may I approach? So I'd like to. I'm going to be giving multiple copies because I'd like the commission members to see what I'm presenting. So. So this is an application that was presented to this commission back in 2006. It was called Willow Ridge. And it did not involve the whole 35 acres, but a very large section, approximately 15 acres, I believe. And they got through the Wetlands Commission pretty efficiently because they did not propose anything substantial that was within their jurisdiction. And there's just a carve out of 5 frontage lots. No concern about wetlands because none of them were being disturbed, as well as the regulated areas. So.
Are you entering this for the record?
Yes, everything that I've been submitting should be made part of the public record, please. So I will put one here.
This is what you've given me, is the same as what.
Yes, I'm getting everyone, sorry for the floppiness here.
These will be entered into the record, so if anybody wants a copy, then you can contact. Yeah, already, so you can take this one. And for.
So.
With the permission of the chair.
Put it on.
Council, with regard to documents that are anticipated being part of the record, it would be helpful if both the applicant and council or anyone who wishes to enter documents for the record, if possible, could bring 8 copies or so all the commissioners could see them at the same time. And
Right.
along with staff. And I appreciate you made some copies, but again, we will, assuming we will have another public hearing, this might be helpful for the next time. I realize nobody can run out to a copy right now. But in the future, that would be very helpful for the commission and also be an efficient use of time if that could be done. So thank you for your cooperation.
Attorney Fitzpatrick has way more experience in this arena than I do, so very good point. So some of the education that I received in the wetlands area was from very skilled attorneys, noted scholars like White Marion, Professor Tondro wrote the Bible on land use regulation in Connecticut. But I also learned a lot from environmental professionals, limnologists like Dr. Robert Corkman, limnologist, Dr. George Knockline, soil scientist, Mark Fairraz, Ken Stevens, environmental authority extraordinaire, Dr. Michael Clemens. These are people who were hired by me on different projects, and I attended these joint sessions between lawyers and environmental professionals. And I do not profess to be an expert in environmental science, but you know, if you're a sponge and willing to learn, you understand what they try to teach everyone about environmental protection. So I feel blessed that I can be at least a little conversant on, you know, some of these issues, but I'm just an attorney. So now that alternative I just presented, by natural extension, you can extend the same concept of trying to avoid the wetlands and the regulated areas 100%, and take your entire 35 acres with a ton of frontage and do frontage, rear lot, frontage, rear lot here and there. And I'm gonna guess maybe you can get about 10 lots, and you can leave that enormous wetlands area in the middle with those streams alone. You know, conservation easement donated to the Naugatuck Land Trust, get a huge write-off as a charitable contribution. And be a great way to maximize your investment, but do not disturb the wetlands. So if you think that is a bizarre concept, I'm next going to introduce something that I found out by coincidence by doing some further research. When I said, well, geez, that's Fred Lugo-Pickey's opinion. He's just an attorney. Okay, I guess he knows a little bit about inland wetlands regulations, Army Corps of Engineer permitting. So there's a little recent history to this property that I think is worthy of attention. Namely, this property, up until recently, was owned by another LLC that Mr. Cormier owned, and it was called the Views at Long Meadow LLC. And that LLC owned the subject approximately 35 acres. Well, many people were adversely affected by the financial crisis of 2008, and foreclosures and bankruptcies occurred with great regularity. And finally, we're out of those doldrums. But sometimes, you know, foreclosures can occur for a number of reasons. So back in March 30th of 2021, the Views at Long Meadow LLC, the owner of this property, which was the borrower, along with Mr. Cormier, the borrower, they were not satisfying all their obligations to their mortgage lender. So both the LLC, Mr. Cormier, were served with a foreclosure action. And I have documentation about that LLC, about that foreclosure, which I'm going to hand to.
Attorney, that has nothing to do with.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
If you just bear with me, please.
will.
So this property was subject to foreclosure. And I happen to have a lot of foreclosure expertise because I worked as a financial attorney in the last 20 years. And one of the requirements of a foreclosure is to prove that you have a mortgage lien on the property and that the borrowers are in default and they haven't remedied the default. And so therefore the foreclosure is going after the collateral. And one of the requirements in state foreclosure practice in Connecticut, in all states, is that the foreclosing party hire an expert to opine on the value of the real estate that's being foreclosed upon. And when the property is other than a simple, single family home that a regular appraiser can testify to, for the most part, you need a very qualified individual with what they call an MAI designation. They're a highly skilled appraisal, kind of like a PhD in appraisal science. And they're the ones who opine on what the value of the collateral, they're sworn in as an expert, they give testimony, and they opine on the value of this 35 acres. So that happened. And incidentally, even though the plaintiff is paying for that appraiser, the rules of professional conduct as it pertains to testifying as an expert on values in superior court, you must render independent value regardless of who's paying for it, okay? So in this case, the foreclosing party used an MAI, who I'm very familiar with, because I do a lot of work in the federal court and you see MAIs all the time. His name is George and Shawa. And he produced an appraisal of this property. And
What does the value of the property have to do with,
I'm gonna get to the punchline in
Okay.
about 1 more minute.
well, that's all you have, so
Okay.
make it quick.
So, the MAI, so what is an MAI appraiser? It's someone who meets the standards of ethics and requirements, has to have at least a 4-year degree in a relevant subject, has completed at least 4,500 hours of specialized work, and has done a thesis that is approved by a board. And that's what an MAI is, and you'll find that they're very qualified. So they're charged in taking a property that has development potential is to look at it carefully. And they're supposed to determine what is the highest and best use. And in testimony in court and in the written appraisal, so what is highest and best use? Well, according to their rules of conduct, it's the use that is reasonably probable and legal use of vacant land or an improved property that is physically possible, appropriately supported, financially feasible, and that results in the highest value. So they look at it from different, and the 4 factors that they're required to examine very thoroughly. Component number 1, is this physically possible? The
You
appraiser
don't have to
determines.
stop, because, you know, I deal with appraisals, that you're coming up with a value, a dollar value, I still don't understand.
The
how
value, Madam Chairman, if you just, I'm sorry, I'm dominating the microphone.
Well,
But
I
it's
just
a-
want you to get to the
Yeah.
point of this, of how
So-
this
So the appraiser,
connects with what.
opined that this was a difficult site with steep slopes, an abundance of wetlands and watercourses. He, in this case, he has to factor in zoning, restrictions, the whole regulatory environment that pertains to this collateral that's the subject of foreclosure.
But they're not an engineer, correct?
They're not an engineer, but they're land use consultants, appraisers. And so he opined that this could be an 8 to 9 lot subdivision just involving basically frontage lots. So that gentleman has directly nothing to do with this proceeding, but MAI, if you know appraisers, they're highly skilled individuals. If you deal with IRS valuation issues, only MAIs are appropriate. If you deal with matters in US tax court, if you deal with bankruptcy court. So this appraisal methodology was unrefuted by the LLC and Mr. Cormier. Then, in the late stages of the foreclosure, the LLC that is managed and owned by Mr. Cormier filed a bankruptcy petition in late 2022. And when you file for bankruptcy and the only asset that you have is real estate, you are required to submit an appraisal that sufficiently identifies the asset as well as the value. The same appraisal that was used in the foreclosure, that was unrefuted by Mr. Cormier or anyone else, was presented to the bankruptcy court as evidence that this property is only worth about $327,000. And the same methodology of just doing frontage lots and rear lots was the basis of that appraisal. And so I'd like to, obviously, everything I'm submitting should be part of the record, the foreclosure, the appraisal. And here is the information on what it is an MAI appraiser and how they're expected to value assets. I gave a kind of an overview of that. So, and if you haven't had enough pieces of paper, I apologize. There's the evidence of the bankruptcy filing, which incidentally officially ended 100% last week or 2 weeks ago, October 20th, 2023. So that appraisal was done in March of 2023 with the opinion that just chopping up this property all the way around would probably be would be the highest and best use, given all of the challenges associated with the property.
That's the question, yes. So I just wanted, I went to page 16 of the report, which I guess brings out the highest and best use. Is this something that you would be using in presenting an alternative?
It
or
just shows that the
applicant to use
alternative's
that?
not crazy. You know, that it's something that a rational person with a certain risk tolerance, with a certain capital investment, what would it take, you know, to make a decent value? So they try to determine what is its investment value, what's the highest possible value under normal, predictable circumstances, given the severity of the slopes, given the wetlands, given the size of it, given what the zoning is, given what wetland regulations are. They take a long time to generate these appraisals because they're held to a very high standard. I use MAIs all the time in bankruptcy, US tax court matters on valuation issues. They're rocket scientists. They're extremely sharp. No, they're not PEs, but they're really land use knowledgeable people. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you. So I too am in the mortgage banking business as a profession, so I do know a lot about appraisals, and I know that you can have two appraisers have two entirely different opinions
That's true.
on that and come up with entirely different values, even though they may be using the same set of data.
My point is the projected use of the property. How do you develop this property in a sensible, highest and best use? And again, Mr. Cormier chose to use this appraisal to justify the assets that were subject to the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. And the methodology is part of that whole package. So if anyone wants to say, geez, that's not very fair to not allow a developer to build roads and whatnot. Listen, wetlands regulations can prevent you from doing a lot of things. You're not necessarily going to be guaranteed the type of use you want. Consistent with reasonable use and feasible prudent alternative, you might be relegated to something that's much smaller than what you anticipated. When I first looked at this, I said, geez, this seems like a square peg going into a round hole. This is an ultra dense proposal that has its place somewhere else, but not for this particular site, not at that density either. Thank you so much for letting me.
Thank you. Excuse me. Excuse me. We're gonna take a short recess. Drink and.
Ready, Michelle?
Okay. We will now hear some other public comments. Just to reiterate, I know there's been some clapping. While I know that you guys are all passionate about that, please don't do that. Let's make sure that, we want to make sure we get everybody up here and heard. We are going to try and limit it because it is 8:30. We don't want to keep everybody too late, and there's still some other business that we have to go through. It doesn't mean that the public hearing is closed, so just to put that out there. If you could please limit your comments to about 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. And also, if you're coming up to speak, and you're pretty much reiterating what the previous speaker said, you can concur, just make it brief, and that would be appreciated. Thank you. Sir,
Madam Chair, if I may.
yes,
Mrs. Ross.
yeah, you may have to push the button. There you go.
There you go.
Red light.
Right here? Okay.
Yep.
I didn't hear any specific questions from me regarding, Attorney Dolugakecki. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Okay, great. Didn't hear any specific questions from me, but I did have one question regarding his testimony and regarding the Willow Ridge plan. I think he made the representation that this plan, as presented as I believe an alternate, had no regulated activities associated with it. I just wanted to confirm that, and make sure that that's clear. Just want to understand.
Thank you. I don't think that the commission took that as that there was any regulated activities. It was just a map, an alternative. That
I
was
stand
supported.
corrected, it was literally 70 square feet. That's what the record is.
70 square feet of.
70 square feet of intrusion into a regulated area. 70 square feet, that's 10 by 7.
And that's part of the records, I'm sure.
That's part of the record, because that's an approved plan, so you can verify that.
Well, we'll look
I
at that.
misspoke, 70 square feet was an incursion in the regulated area.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just a clarification, is that being submitted as an alternative to the current plan
by the intervener.
by the intervener? Okay.
Yes, very good question. What I'm saying is that let's not talk about different ways to engineer a project. The very core question is, what am I allowed to develop considering all of the regulations, the restrictions, the buffers, the zoning, etc. So just a plain vanilla R30 subdivision with just frontage and rear lots. It would involve no infrastructure improvements at all. And according to the MAI, that might end up being 9-10-ish lots with no cost of building.
Thank you. We'll look, pull the old records and look at that as well. Mr. Overton,
Yeah.
reply.
Last thing, it is, thank you, it is pointed out in the wetlands application that was provided by the intervener. It does say 7 square feet of direct wetland disturbance. There's no reference in here as far as any regulated activity beyond that, so that is just a representation of direct wetland disturbance for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand why we're represented from BL Engineering here. Like to please come up and state your name and address. You have your peer review that you did on October 30th. I think we just received this yesterday, basically. But we haven't really had a chance to go through this.
Okay, good evening. For the record, my name is Robert Bowles. I'm a licensed professional engineer in several states, including Connecticut. I'm under the employment of BL companies. We are located in Meriden, Connecticut. We've been tasked with providing a peer review of this application and in reference to the inland wetlands and watercourse regulations of the borough of Naugatuck. adopted June 14th, 1974, amended through February 16th, 2009. I have no connection to the applicant, anybody in the town. We are a true independent third party. We're providing this review based solely on the what we see on the application or in the application or not see in the application and the regulations that the borough has put forth. I visited this site on 2 occasions. The first visit, I was joined by members of the borough design engineer team and your soil scientist. On the second occasion, I went out with our soil scientist from the L company, who is Sagan Simcoe. He's a professional wetland scientist and a certified professional soil scientist. I reviewed all the documents that are available and associated with this application. Those same documents are all available on the borough's website, including my review. I'm going to paraphrase basically what we found. I'm not going to read every item, but I encourage any interested parties from the public to go and download it and read through it, as well as the commission, and we'll be present at the next meeting to answer any questions you might have. I'm just going to skip around a little bit, kind of go on some of the bigger ticket items here. With regards to section 7.3 of the regulations, all applications shall contain such information as necessary for a fair and informed determination of the issues by the commission. Based on our review, we do not believe that the current application is a state of development that would satisfy that requirement. For various reasons, I'm not going to go into all of them. Some of our larger findings were related to section 8.6.2, hydrological analysis of runoff and peak flow for both before and after development. Our review, we agreed that the calculation methodology was consistent with engineering practice. However, the manner executed failed to accurately characterize the pre versus post-development conditions. We didn't feel that the drainage maps were clear. And we offered several in this here. We offered several bullet points of items we'd like to see clarified on the drawings. With regard to the execution of the methodology, the selected location of design point A, which the design point is the basis for the drainage design. It's supposed to represent the outlet from the site. We didn't agree with that. It's shown generically in the middle of the site in the meadow area. It seems to us that the existing and proposed drainage areas delineate drainage to various locations along the meandering Long Meadow Pond Brook. Thus, design point A needs to be the brook. Further, it needs to be a point on the brook, most downstream on the site, which is basically the southeast corner of the lot. As modeled now, none of the time of concentrations, which is a variable we use for stormwater calculations, it's a critical variable. It represents the time that it takes water to flow through a watershed from its most remote location. It's not necessarily the longest path. There's several variables built into that variable, such as slope and ground cover and so on. We didn't agree with some of the time of concentrations, and we didn't like the time of concentration should follow all the way through to the outlet from the site. It seemed like what was done is that the time of concentrations were stopped at the edge of the wetlands, where they essentially what that means is that the wetlands itself isn't included in the model. The current drainage area delineation for the entire site north of the brook is shown as a single 27-acre drainage area. This is represented as watershed 12 on their maps. we feel that the modeling and mapping in that area should be revised and refined, as it appears that there are at least 4 different watersheds within that area. What that means is when I follow the contours, is the ground elevations that are available for me to use, the path of water would discharge at 4 different locations into the wetland areas, and hence 4 different locations along Long Meadow Pond Brook, which I will refer to as the brook from here on out. Those areas should be further refined. So overall, what I'm saying here with the drainage is I think that a great deal of work needs to go in to refine some of these drainage areas, and show more mapping. I believe that the applicant is going to have to do this for Army Corps permitting anyway, so it might as well be presented to the commission for review. I had several observations about the level spreaders. Some of those were in relation to not knowing the groundwater, which I'll talk about in a second here. I also asked the applicant or advised the applicant that they should provide in the drainage report clear tables that show pre versus post peak flow and volume should be provided for each watershed and for the entire site, which means all those individual watersheds that I mentioned. We should see a pre and post analysis for each of those different watersheds so that the impacts on the wetlands in the upland review area can be further understood. I'm skipping a lot of comments here. We made 32 total comments. Those were the ones specific to certain sections of the borough's regulations. The following comments were related to other items that we noticed. One of the more important ones that has already been hinted at by the applicant is that we did not agree with the wetland delineation that was put forth with the application. There is historical delineation from 2006. We did, our soil scientist that I mentioned, Sagan Simcoe, he went out into the field and verified those 2 locations, which are basically situated between the 2 wetlands in the north that are currently delineated. There's 2 additional wetlands in those areas. And I see somebody is driving there now. Yeah, okay. So as shown there in the light green, we agree with that delineation there. We didn't have any issues with the applicant's delineation of what I'll call the wetland proper, meaning that very large area around Long Meadow Pond Brook. And they do, I will concede that they did increase that area by upwards of 2 acres, I believe. But we still feel that the 2 wetland areas that are shown trickling down, I'll say from Webb Road, are indeed wetlands. And then probably the last large item that I'll discuss is there are some pretty significant permanent, what I'll call clean water diversions proposed for drainage areas located behind building 1 and in front of building 2. I guess the biggest problem with those is that that's definitely an indication of a changed drainage pattern where 3 sides of the site are surrounded by topography that's about 600 feet. The middle of the wetland area is under 400 feet. So you're talking about quite a bit of elevation change around 3 sides of the site. One of building 1 is the building off to the far left there, the larger building off to the far left. There's quite a bit of what
clean water diversion, meaning this would be water that's intercepted as it's flowing over, leaked up or a small brush or picked up, as groundwater. So there's, you know, it's as clean a runoff as you're gonna get. Is diverted. The issue is that the outlets for this are flared end sections, which represent more or less a point discharge at the edge of the wetland, whereas in existing conditions, say, for example, here we look at building one, if building one wasn't there, you would flow up across the proposed parking lot and to a section of Long Meadow Pond Brook, you much further upstream of their proposed bridge crossing. So there's a couple elements there. One, they'll have to analyze the stream flow for Army Corps permitting for the bridge. But the other issue is, are there wetlands in that area that is off their site that would be starved, for lack of a better term? So that was. Let me just skim through if there's anything else. They are proposing, you know, the stormwater chambers that they're proposing, that's hand in hand with systems I've designed hundreds of times. That's what we do as engineers now. They are proposed to be wrapped, so they'll have like a geotext cut or a membrane that would make them impervious, so the groundwater elevation doesn't really matter so much. However, if that you're taking out soil that is now allowing groundwater to come through, and in taking that out, you put back a concrete structure with a membrane lining, you're potentially blocking that flow path. I can't say that that's what they're doing or not doing, because there's no geotechnical investigations yet that would allow us to make any of those conclusions. That's mentioned in here as well, that there's we'd like to see a more refined survey. When we were walking out there, there was evidence of rock, not necessarily bedrock, but certainly some very large boulders that will have to be dealt with. There's also various debris from past use of the property, including some abandoned cars. I did see what looked like some oil tanks that were partially buried, buried on three sides, but open on one. That's a little crazy terrain there. I didn't see any evidence of the rubber that was mentioned earlier, so I can't really speak to that, but I haven't reviewed any environmental reports or anything in association with it yet. So I think that pretty much summarizes our key things. Like I said, there was 31 or 32 comments here. I didn't touch on half of them. I just kind of went for the big ticket items as I see them. So I encourage the public to read that. And anybody else, any questions at this point?
I just have one question, regarding the, you were talking about the rubber that you didn't see any on the site, but when you reviewed the documents, it looks like the Delta Environmental Services report was one of the documents. Do you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was looking through that when the conversation was occurring earlier in the meeting about that. I am thinking that the report that may be on the website available to us is not complete. I don't recall rubber being mentioned in there. I may have missed it, but I did skim that report. I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm a professional engineer. You know, we have environmental people that can look at that and interpret it better. But based on my review, I did see some mitigation plans. I didn't put too much heat into it because I didn't know if it was done or had been just proposed, but I would check to make sure that report is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners?
No, yes, no, good,
All good?
okay.
All right. Thank you. So, and just, just to reiterate, we do have, B&L's review, peer review, so all the comments, that Mr. Rolls had spoke of are in this report and it has been submitted for the record, and we will get a chance to review that. Okay, on to the rest of the public comment. Who's on the list first? On the list? Okay. Yes, please. This is the list of the speakers. Yeah, thank you so much. Leah DiCaprio? Sorry if I'm not for your name, it's not intentional.
Can let them know who's next, too, Trace.
Yep. And then after that, I think it's Alan Wargo. Alan Wargo, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Leah DiCaprio and I live on 84 Lorella Drive. I lived here since November 2019 with my fiance. I have done past invasive plant cleanup on protected species land in my hometown of West Haven. I've lived here for a couple of years, but I gotta say, I love this town and I plan on staying here for a long while. I've also been helping to conserve the continuation of the monarch butterfly species for 5 years this past August. I am greatly concerned that apartments on the Old Millville Nursery will not only cause environmental issues, but health issues in the near future once the apartments are down or set down. I'm just going to get straight to the point that the cost outweighs the benefits of these new affordable apartments with great habitat loss, but not only water quality issues, but water level issues. Whatever enters the soil quickly gets into the waterways, then the flora, fauna, et cetera, Some protected wetland species that may be affected, some is the blue spotted salamander, egrets, pie-billed greavies, box turtles, and our bald eagles. I can't imagine Naugatuck without the bald eagles. Development encroaching around the wetlands, sorry, that's covered, but with the map, as you see, the apartments are circular around the wetlands. And I just feel like it's not just minimal habitat loss, it's, sorry, I got a little stuck there. It's a great minimal habitat loss. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Alan Wargo. And after that is, I think it's Mr. Jondo? Sylvester Jondo after, okay.
Alec Borgo, 1058 River Avenue. I live adjacent to this. And I've been around it for a short while, just shy of 80 years. I think I know it pretty well. The only person I know for sure who knows it better than me is Donnie Anderson, because his father used to own it. There was a playground where the kids swim, go through the swamp to get to the brook. The swamp is much bigger than it appears in this drawing. And wetlands is one thing, but this is, honest to goodness, biggest floodplain that Naugatuck has. When we have heavy continuous rain, that whole area inside those green dots, which are supposed to be trees, is a lake. You can have some of the people here I've seen, they showed me, they took pictures of it when it was up. And you could throw them in the damn thing. It's not a funny thing. The idea of putting in 24-foot wide roads is a good way if you wanted to exterminate the people who live there if there was a fire. because nobody's gonna get out, especially when fire engines are trying to get in. It's an improper design. The whole thing is, it's nice to squeeze your pennies to try and get as much out of what you got as possible, but not to damage everything that you're touching. And that's what they're doing here. This has no reason to exist. There was a previous plan very similar to this. I can't remember exactly the time here, it was 10, 15 years ago. It failed on passing all the rules and so forth. But I remember they clearly showed the high water mark, and it was within 8 or 10 feet of the buildings. It's an idiotic plan. What somebody mentioned before is the only feasible thing. If you want to build around it, you can put in a lot here, a lot there, and you might get maybe 10 lots, like you said, maybe 5, whatever might work. But this doesn't work.
Thank you. Mr. Janda.
My name is Sylvester Janda, 171 Grammar. My wife.
Yeah, push the gray button that says talk, and then the microphone will light up red.
I think I've got it.
Oh, no.
I'll talk loud.
It needs to be on the record.
Can you get it?
Hold on one second. Might one of those microphones work?
Yeah, I don't think they can pull because they're all corded.
Well, then mine isn't working either. Yours works, mine doesn't.
Oh, what, did somebody hit a?
Is there? Okay, this
Somebody
works.
just
There you go.
The only one with the light.
Try to use that. Try
Try
to.
it working now. Okay, now got
Somebody
it.
touch it.
All right,
All right.
thank you. All
Okay.
right.
My name is Sylvester Janda. I live at 171 Grammar Road, my wife and 2 children. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Borough of Naugatuck and the Wetlands Commission. Thank you for allowing those borough residents to make public comment on a proposed building of 467 unit housing complex by Apartments at Long Meadow LLC on 35 acres of partially developed land. I would like to start, so everyone in the audience is aware, the site survey by Kingsmark Environmental Review Team was performed back in 2006, 2007 at the request of the borough's Planning and Zoning Commission for a then proposed age-restricted project at Long Meadow LLC. Kingsmark Environmental Team was contracted to perform this environmental site survey. Most of the land is currently owned by Apartments at Long Meadow LLC. In addition to the Kingsmark study, the Southwest Conservation District was also enlisted to perform a site survey with their report found in the appendix of the Kingsmark report. Both reports are in the public domain and widely available on the internet. I'm sure the Planning and Zoning Commission has a copy of it, as well as they may share it with the Inland Wetlands Commission and its residents on the borough website. In the report, it states the site contains rubber shards scattered in the soil. They're referred to as rubber waste fill on page 37 of the report, with a concentrated area on the western end of the property. It states the rubber shards must be removed and a remedial action plan was to be required at that time. I was told by some longtime borough residents that Uniroyal provided the chopped up tire material to the greenhouse to use as mulch to see if it was a viable product for the end of the life of automobile tires, and told that it apparently helped in reducing water usage in the field where the crops were grown. The report also stated on page 35 that an underground storage tanks were found on site, but did not indicate what was stored in these tanks. It stated that the tanks must be fully investigated. While the Kingsmark part of the report focused on the old tire material in the underground storage tanks, the Southwest Conservation District report confirmed the tire material. In addition, on page 8, it discussed that there were test pits and data shown that VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, were found. It also stated that not all the test pits were actually mapped. It stated that heavy metals were also found as well. We don't know exactly what compounds were found but the state of Connecticut has a list of over 50 VOC compounds that are deemed hazardous to life and are tested for in our drinking water. As most of us folks that live up here have private wells, our drinking water is imperative to protect as a valuable resource, as there is no alternative. The site plan for this development sits over a shallow underground aquifer and is shown in the state DEP maps as such. We get our drinking water from this aquifer that is recharged from the surface water provided by Long Meadow Pond Brook, its tributaries, and the upland soil surrounding the brook and the wetlands. While it's important for the Inland Wetlands Commission to protect the health of the brook and its surrounding watershed, in doing so, you are as well protecting the aquifer just below, thus our valuable drinking water. Due to the VOC and heavy metal contamination, according to the Southwest Conservation District report, any development on the site will require remediation to protect the spread and further contamination of the watershed and potentially the aquifer. How many acres or how deep into the ground this remediation, if ever involves, is unknown. To quote from the Southwest Conservation District report on pages 8 through 9, quote, frankly, exposing any portion of the community to these types of contaminants should not be entertained unless the remediation process was highly successful in dramatically reducing or eliminating the threat. And they went on stating it would be prudent for the borough to contact the Connecticut DEP Permitting Enforcement and Remediation Division if it hasn't already done so. This is back in 2006.
Thank you. Mr. Dando,
Yes.
is there much more because we were trying to limit to 3?
I got maybe another minute.
Okay, because you're over.
An extensive study of the site must be done by the state DEP to measure just exactly what and how much of the VOCs and heavy metals are present and where they are located. What are the effects to the environment and that the tire or rubber waste present? What was in those underground storage tanks? Did they rot out and leak into the surrounding soils and groundwater? Until a detailed environmental site study and potential mitigation plans proposed by the DEP or developer to the developer and the borough, this project must not be approved. These two reports clearly indicate concerns with known and unknown threats that can endanger the Long Meadow Pond Brook watershed, its wetlands, its flora and fauna, and even more importantly, the underlying aquifer. We must protect the drinking water of the local residents in the borough, and even those homeowners that tap into the same aquifer water source in Middleborough and Oxford with their well. Please reach out to the DEP, obtain more data and facts before you allow this or any project that will disturb the site until we know exactly what VOCs and heavy metal risk we're up against. Incidentally, the literature states that automobile tires are manufactured with over 100 chemical compounds, many of which are VOCs that are known carcinogens and neurotoxins. This can best be illustrated in a news story when attempts were made to create an artificial reef off the coast of Florida using 500,000 end-of-life automobile tires. The attempt failed miserably with no life crew on or near those tires due to all the toxic chemicals that slowly release from them, creating a dead zone. Please do not approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm just going to state that 3 minutes, please try and limit that. We have 17 people on this list that want to speak, and I want to be able to be fair to everybody. So appreciate that. Kimberly Simcoe.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Simcoe, and I'm here tonight representing myself and my 2 adult children. The 3 of us reside at 399 Webb Road, along with our 2 family dogs. One is a therapy dog. My husband and I relocated to the 399 Webb Road property at the completion of our military service in December of 1989, making this year the 34th year in our home. In January of this past year, my husband Bob died of cancer through toxic exposure from his tours of duty aboard U.S. submarines. Our government knew it wasn't safe to put him where they did, but they did it anyway. His last words to me right before he died were, "They stole my life from me, fight like hell." It was a crime of epic proportion, a crime against humanity. And that's why I'm here tonight, to stop something like this from happening to my family again. You've heard the evidence of what will happen to our drinking water, how the toxins will seep deep down into the earth and poison the water that we drink. This is simply unacceptable. And not of minimal concern, as Mr. Overton suggests. During his presentation and assessment, nothing was addressed as to the proposal of keeping our wells drinking water safe. Allowing this project to move forward will be a travesty to our neighborhood, the people who live here, the children that are growing up, and the animals that reside in our homes. I and all my children have left So tonight I stand before you alongside my children, my neighbors, my friends, asking you to make the right decision and put an end to this proposed development because our lives are in your hands. And we trust that you, members of the board, will make that right decision. I also want to commend and thank Fred Luokecki for his precise delivery of the information he shared tonight for those of us that don't understand or are not educated in the things that could happen on our property. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the commission for your service, and we're very sorry for your loss.
Thank you very much.
Next I have Sean Stanton. Sean Stanton.
Thank you. First, I'd like to offer my sympathies to Mrs. Simcoe. I'm Sean Stanton. I live at 255 Webb Road. My husband, Jeffrey Doy. I'm going to keep it very short because I think we all know why we're here and what we're talking about. And I'm just asking you to just keep harm away from our wells and our water. We rely on our 250-foot well for all of our water needs. After the contamination, who's going to be responsible for providing us with potable water? The builder will change LLC, set up a shell company, leave the country, and never be seen again. So who's the borough of Naugatuck are we gonna pay the price? Also, the Naugatuck River is the second cleanest river in Connecticut. Let's make sure it's not the second dirtiest. And I think right now, all the well owners here should test their water right away. And if any ground is moved, keep testing it, because it's on record now. And I'm going back to Mrs. Simcoe. I'm sorry, it's gonna be contaminated irrevocably. And the only words I've heard from the developers are disturbance, disturbance, disturbance. And, you know, I hope you make the right decision for our community. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Christina Gordon? Christina Gordon?
Good evening. My name is Christina Gordon. I reside at 1131 River Ave. So I'm a direct abutter to this proposed project. I get to look at Long Meadow Brook and the wetlands out my bedroom window every day. I can attest during heavy rainfalls, it is a lake. To echo every concern expressed about well water contamination, I'd like to do that and keep it brief. As the property has transferred legal ownership recently, in my understanding, a phase 1 would have had to happen. I would expect that a phase 2 would have been recommended, if not required, based on those findings. I wonder why that has not been entered into the public record thus far. I also echo recommendations that the borough convey or convene with DEP on this property and what recommendations there are. Because despite proposed development, remediation action might be warranted just based on the conditions on site. I would like to ask the applicant to disclose the height of these buildings. We know that there are 497 units proposed. Based on the footprints of these buildings, even at 1-bedroom units, the primary density, I can't understand how we achieve that density without finding ourselves at 5, if not 6 stories tall, as they're proposing parking surfaces underneath the buildings. Traditionally, even when one builds a bridge over a wetland or sensitive area, there are shadow plane studies conducted. So a building that is 60 feet plus tall, I would argue, renders substantial impact on the controlled or regulated areas, if not the wetlands themselves. In terms of wildlife, on my property, I see bobcats, bears, pheasants, rabbits, lots of deer, lots of coyote, eagles. I wonder where they go once this development replaces their habitat. 697 surface parking spaces proposed. I saw no evidence of attempts to mitigate impervious area. They're talking about retainage and controlled release of additional runoff that this project would create, but no real attempts to limit that impervious coverage. So I would ask the applicant, if this were to proceed in any capacity, to look at alternatives for, permeable parking spaces if there's this much surface parking proposed.
10 seconds left, please.
I'm just reviewing my notes here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. David Rogers?
Good evening. My name is Dave Rogers. I live at 100 Hill Road in Naugatuck. I've been there since 1958 with my wife and daughter, along with 2 cats and 2 dogs. Our well right now works great. A couple comments that I wanted to make before I had my prepared comments. That approval in 2006 by the Wetlands never had a public hearing. They approved it before any of us knew. Much different situation this time. And also, as far as they pointed out, the B&L companies, upriver might be some wetlands that will get starved out. It's my property. There's a lot of wetlands there. And I'm going to skip a lot of this to keep in thinking about time. Obviously, I'm worried about my well. And the reason I'm worried about my well is that when I was a child in the 1960s, there was a field of baled rubber shavings that we played hide and seek in. Unoil discarded their waste on the property. Those bales were 2 to 3 times bigger than the bales of hay we used to feed our horses with. They were huge bales, 6 feet tall. The field of them was at least the size of a football field. And it was located the northernmost 2 buildings into the parking lot, yes, and below that, heading towards the brook. That's where that field was located. It was also spread throughout the property as the former owner experimented with those shavings as mulch. If those shavings are disturbed, the aquifer could be permanently ruined along with all our wells. Considering the size of this property and the amount of wetlands involved, this application is obnoxious, irresponsible, and reckless. This applicant's trying to exploit our town so that he can make millions of dollars and then walking away, leaving us with a dried up or polluted aquifer. This is not some isolated little wetland with a couple of tadpoles swimming around. This is a major wetland that is part of a major aquifer and brings water to thousands of people.
30 seconds, Mr. Rogers.
I'm not an expert at reading wetland applications, but the review of the plan by BL companies in Southwest Conservation District are scathing. The application is so deficient, it's scary. Why would a professional developer and a company like LSR bring an application that ignores so many requirements to this commission? That's baffling. In closing, please don't let this project move forward. I'm asking the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission to protect a major wetland area and the aquifer that feeds our wells. If there was ever a piece of property that should be protected, this is the piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Dandino? Mr. Dandino?
Good evening. My name is Mark Dandino, and I used to live at 50 Hill Road. If we could have the wetlands map, I could show you. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, all right. Yeah, blow it up if you can. Okay, we used to live in this area here. This is the property we had since 1967. We recently sold it last July. And, years ago, when my father had a garden, and he would tell me to go down to Silinari's to get some plants. And I used to cut. We used to take a shortcut. Instead of going down Webb Road, we used to go down through here and through the property to the greenhouses. And on the way there, I would see barrels of, I don't know what were in them, but they were on the side of the dirt road that went through there. And there were also in this area here, the tire residue in through here. They were using the tire residue for the shrub that they planted. So I don't know if that was ever removed, but the bales were right in this area right here, the bales that we used to play in. Well, they're buried, they're buried, well, okay, they're buried. Also, like Dave Rogers said, this area here, it's all wet. And across from 389 Webb Road, this area here is all wetlands. It was a swamp. And Nick Silinardi filled that in and put more plants in there. So is it safe to build something in that area there? If you dig down 2 or 3 feet, you'll see residue of what was a swamp. You'll see this clay-like material, black gray material, 3 feet down. There were skunk cabbage growing there and pussy willows all through that area with a foot of water. And Nick Silinardi filled that in. So that's my only concern, as well as the well that we had. Our well is 260 feet down there. And, we have concerns, there has been cancer in the area. So, my mother had cancer, Roy Brooks, I believe, or your mother had it, Randy Brooks, several people in the area had cancer. So, but basically that's all I have to say. So I'm here to support my neighbors. The property is not in our name anymore. So, that's it.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you. Jeffrey Doyd? Jeffrey Doyd? Thank you. I'm gonna give a 30-second warning just so that I wrap it up.
Good evening, members of the commission. Jeffrey Doyle, 255 Webb Road. I've lived in that house with my wife for 34 years. My house is situated right opposite buildings 6 and 7. We don't have the building map up, but I'm sure you will know what 6 and 7 is. And there's an entrance there, right opposite our house, which is a very steep entrance into Silinari's ex-property. That property is well forested along that bank. I know you've walked it, I've seen you there the last couple of days walking. There's some big trees, they'll all have to be removed. And if they're removed, the soil and land is going to become unstable, no matter what the developer plans. After reviewing those plans, it's clear to me, it demonstrates as an engineer, may I say, that disturbance of earth and trees is inevitably going to affect the groundwater supply and the wells. I'm requesting from the commission to protect our community from any harm that comes around damaging wetlands, potentially causing our well water to be contaminated. Number one, this is a wetlands meeting and it's a water meeting. And I think the priority here is that we never touch or contaminate our wells. As was suggested earlier, we'd like to have them tested now. And if
this development does take place, I'm going to request we have them tested again. Because if there is any, you're hearing about cancer, you're hearing about all sorts of things. I don't know that's responsibly the reason, but I am very concerned. So, in turn, I'm importantly concerned about the well, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Travis Palmer?
Hi, I'm Travis Palmer. I live at 389 Hood Road. There's a pond on my property that is home to many different, examples of wildlife. We have a snapping turtles. I've seen several box turtles there, which are endangered. Fish, frogs, ducks, geese, fishers, the works. And all this depends on our, fragile ecosystem to thrive. I ask that the commission actively work against any developers who would socialize the risk of their ventures on the communities and environments they exploit. Thank you.
Sabine Wargo?
Sabine Wargo, great, now. So I am Sabina Wargo Grape, daughter of Alec Wargo. I live at 1060 Rubber Avenue. I am a landscape architect and I am very interested in this project. I actually don't have a speech prepared. I'm just going to ask a few questions and ask for consideration of those issues. It was mentioned by BL, I believe, the amount of fill, the amount of grading that is going on beyond the limits of those structures that we can see on the plan and the streets. The underground storage facilities, I'm sure the calculations will be done properly and ethically, but that is very important. The temporary disturbance that everyone keeps talking about, I don't see it as temporary at all. If you construct utilities, bridges, and the different, we're actually just dealing with utilities and bridges at this point, there will be repair, there will be replacement, and each and every time they have to go in to maintain, these areas will be disturbed again. That, in my opinion, also includes large areas of disturbance because you're not talking about a small little lawnmower coming through, but heavy equipment to do that work. Vegetation removal, beyond invasives. I could not hear the environmentalist as she was speaking. I know, we all know there's a ton of invasives, but we also know there's a lot of valuable material down in that basin as well that does mitigate the different toxins or nitrates in particular. Nothing was mentioned of fauna. Not sure if beyond flora any fauna is being disturbed in the reports. I haven't seen that mentioned. I have a concern that to keep the density that we're being shown, that more parking would have to be added. In that case, the scale of this project would increase and the disturbed areas would be larger. In general, this project, consider also the addition of the massive amounts of traffic, which is not just a traffic issue, but also brings its toxins and, rubber remnants and oils and what have you. So that's another issue to consider. But in general, I would just like to say that this project destroys one of the last quiet, bucolic, single-family neighborhoods that we have in town. I've been lucky to grow up in it my entire life. I've been proud to say I'm from Novato because of that beautiful area. And I would hope that you would preserve it, or at least consider a plan that preserves the appearances as they are now. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary O'Connor?
Hi, my name is Carrie O'Connell. I live at 23 Crowfoot Road. As you've noticed from other testimonies, a lot of people have been in this neighborhood for 50, 60 years. I'm part of the newer generation. I'm raising my young kids here. I have a kindergartner and a second grader at Western. And they love this town. They've come to trust the adults in this town to do what's best for them. And I'm just asking you to please consider them. I moved here with the anticipation that my kids would have an opportunity to grow up healthy and happy and protected by their community. And the thought of them drinking from a well that is contaminated is devastating to me. It's making me reconsider my ability to stay here with my family. And I just can't tell you how devastating it is to hear that a developer would even consider bringing this into our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa and Christian Hurt.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Herb, and I am here with my husband, Christian Herb. He is a former Burgess and Charter Revision Commissioner. We live at 149 Evelyn Drive, and we do truly care deeply about our community as a whole and the environment. We purchased our home in August of 2015, and we live there along with our two sons, Austin and Stephen. They are the 5th generation of Herbs growing up in this town. We are here tonight asking this commission to protect our family from the potential harm that will be caused by the damage of this proposed development that it will have on contaminating our well water. Having to rely on well water for drinking, cooking, bathing, and washing for not only our family members, but for our dog Sissy and our cat Remy, who we truly love, has us distressed. After becoming aware of the contaminants on the proposed site of this development, we are employing this commission to protect our family, our neighbors, and the community as a whole from any harm that may be caused by this damaging of the wetlands and potentially contaminating our well water and impacting all of our health. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor Well.
Hi, I'm Robert Law, 91 Wet Road, and I concur with my neighbors. I'm very concerned about our well and my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Dean.
Hi, I'm Lisa Dean. I live at 5 Westover Drive. I've been there for almost 30 years now. My house is right on the corner of Westover and Webb Road. My driveway is on Webb Road. Building number 4 is going to be directly across the street from my house. It is going to be a shame that I'm going to have to look at an apartment building after looking at the old nursery all these years. But I'm more concerned about the well. Now I'm even more concerned knowing that the rubber shadings are directly across the street from my house. I have 3 adults and 3 dogs living in my house right now, and we rely on our well for clean drinking water. Please save our wells. Thank you.
Eric.
My name's Cheyenne Erickson, and I live on 15 Coventry Lane with my beautiful wife. So I agree with everybody on the wells, but I want to talk about the effects of climate change that we can see all around the world and the loss of life and property. Because of all these big hurricane storms and the stuff, FEMA has been raising insurance rates and they've been increasing floodplains in order to generate more dollars. Those of us that live on the brook actually have to pay FEMA flood insurance. So I'm concerned about what's going to happen with that. We've seen the effects of the recent storms with flooding. Everybody knows where the former Pease used to be. The road got washed out there. Webster Bank, the pipes there get clogged up and it floods Rubber Avenue, floods into Mount View Plaza. And I believe there's other stuff that's further down the line. So I'm concerned about how all this water that we're going to collect and eventually release is going to do to this river and how it's going to back up and what's it's going to cause things upriver all the way up further up into Oxford. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Donald Anderson.
Donald Anderson, I live on 1161 Rubber Avenue Extension. I lived there for 86 years. And what's going on over there, I just can't accept it, you know. The water situation down there is, it's a swamp, it always was. My father owned all that property that's being used right now. And You know, I don't know, wetlands, I don't think anybody knows what wetlands there is down there. Like we do, you know? And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all I have on the list. Do we have anybody on the line?
Yeah, let me stop the
One
share
second, we
here
have
so I
some
can
On
see.
Zoom that would like to speak. Just pause it for a second. Thank you all for your patience, appreciated.
Melissa Leonard, you can unmute.
Hi, good evening. Melissa Leonard, 450 Guntown Road. I wrote my comments, sorry, I'm trying to go to a quiet room in my house. I wrote my comments actually before I heard about the rubber, the dumping that apparently has been done there by Uniroyal, which is shocking to me and makes me wonder if remediation of the property should be the primary goal here instead of building on the property. Anyway, I'll make it quick. No way, in no way is runoff from 8 buildings and over 400 parking spaces not going to impact the wetlands in this area. I'm extremely concerned about the neighbors' wells. I'm on a well. I don't live in the neighborhood, but I understand problems with well water. So I'm extremely concerned about that, and I hope that you'll take that primarily into consideration. So all the runoff from the buildings and the parking spaces, where is the water and the pollutants? Where are the water and the pollutants going to go? According to the applicant, some will go into the wetlands and some into the sewer system. Either way, it's a lose-lose. Tremendous impact on the wetlands. If all that water that currently goes into the brook and the wetlands starts going into the sewage system, you're robbing the wetlands of a primary water source. According to the Southwest Conservation District's preliminary review, the application is incomplete, as we heard by numerous people tonight. No alternative site plans, no description of ecological communities and the functions of the wetlands or watercourses, no description of how the applicant's going to change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses. No maps of percolation tests, test pits, or observation holes, no description of fill that might be needed, no permanent vegetation cover and seeding rate is specified on the site plan. And the Southwest Conservation District map shows that the site is almost entirely unsuitable for the proposed type of development. They need basements to put in parking, and the map that Southwest Conservation District came up with, a tremendous amount of the property can't have basements. I think the application should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an
Allison, Sancherico, you can unmute, please.
I'm Allison Sancherico at 9 Rain Dance Circle, and I am encouraging you to reject the proposal as well. There's no reason to be building on any green area. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's all that we have from Zoom and all that we had signed up. Is there anybody else that would like a chance to speak? You have 3 minutes. Strictly adhered to.
No problem. I'm Samuel Landsman. I live at 220 Webb Road. I have about 350 feet of frontage on the east side of this property. We're on a well. We're highly concerned about what's going on there. I know there's some other houses around me. They have shallow wells. They're only like 30 feet deep. So they have even bigger concerns. I also have livestock, which is directly drinking from that brook. So I don't know how this is going to affect that. So there's a lot that's going on here that we just don't really have a handle on. And I urge the commission to really take a serious look at whether this should even happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Didn't get a chance to? You're next. After this gentleman. After this gentleman, yeah, you can do it. Thank you.
My name is John Sultanas. I live at 6 Hill Road, Middlebury. And I grew up in this house. My grandparents passed it off to me. So we have 3 adults one dog, two cats. And I grew up around this area looking and trying to remember a lot of things that I forgot about. But the thing is that when people talk about the swamp, the obvious concern, our well is not even 30 feet deep, it's shallow. So the concern of drinking water and stuff like that, I've experienced that before in the past because I used to live in Naugatuck, right below Andrew Mountain. And that was an issue that they had to supply drinking water to Huron Lane because you couldn't even do anything with it other than bathe in it. So, by saying all these different things, I hope that you reject it. If you guys do look further into this, to take this into a step that, where anything that is hazardous, and I've worked in that industry as well too, that it has to be tested, it has to be looked at. It is not something just to easily disregard. So please just focus on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, there, she's coming.
Sitting too long.
I think this is it.
Yes, my name is Tina Woodsdale. I lived at 6 Webb Road with my husband and raised 2 daughters there. The house used to be his grandparents, then his dad's, and then we moved in. Everybody addressed everything about the environment. I'm addressing the traffic. We live at a sharp corner. There's been so many accidents there in the years that we've been there. Cars have crashed and gone into the brook on both sides of the road. You can ask Marcia that. One time my kids just got off the school bus, a car lost control, hit the front porch of our house, the corner of the porch, and drove off just after the kids got off the bus. Another day I had gone out to the mailbox, just collected our mail. 10 minutes later, a car coming down Webb Road, lost control, hit the curb, took out our mailbox, and went like 25 feet into our yard. This is what I'm concerned about. You're talking about another probably 1,000 cars.
One day.
We understand that. Unfortunately, that's not a wetlands issue.
No, but I'm just saying that's my concern.
Understood. Thank you.
With the other stuff.
Anyone else? One more.
No.
Hi, my name is Frank Ruella, and I live at 6 Grand Ridge Road. And I'm pretty obvious concern about my well. There's 5 of us at the house, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Right.
Yes.
I'm too from the hip here because I didn't write them down.
That's okay. Let's get 3 minutes.
I live at 1075 Rubber Avenue, Naugatuck, Connecticut.
Your name, I didn't get your name.
Louis Lagori,
Thank you.
1075, is this okay now?
Yes.
And, I lived there all my life. My father bought the house in 1960. He passed on. He went to my mother, and then he went to me. My well is literally 3 feet off the river line. At a 5 foot lift from the river, it's not even 3 feet off the river line. And, I've had trouble, we've had trouble with this well before, with the wetlands, when the pipelines went through into the wetlands, which was actually their property at one point. And, they refused to do anything. First they contaminated it, and then it just depleted it when they were doing some blasting. Now you're proposing this stuff here, what kind of structure you need to put in those wetlands to keep those 6 or I don't know how many story buildings up. They're gonna be humongous. And then you got all these neighborhoods, which are literally looking at these wetlands every day. I look out my back door, I'm looking at it. Looking out my window, I'm looking at it. Now, I'm gonna have to look at 20-foot buildings. I'm right across the street from Wargo, and, I've been there, like I said, all my life, and I'm really concerned about my well. It's a major issue. And then, we're gonna have trouble, even though he says we're not gonna have this water runoff, when Long Meadow's full, that river's ripping. It comes down to the tops of the bridges already. When we really have a big rainstorm, and then that wetlands, I would like to propose that after that major rainstorm, those rivers are ripping, that somebody goes in there and checks the wetlands then. Because it's dried off. The farmer who used to live there, he had to put culverts in.
30 seconds.
All right, whatever, he had to put culverts in. He put 3 big culverts in to diminish the wetland, it still wasn't enough. That's why he put the greenhouse up. He had no place to plant and all that problem. And that 14 acres or whatever it is, I lived there my whole life. If there's not at least 20, I would pay him to put those buildings up. At least 20 when it's wet. I know, those bales everybody was talking about, I saw them when I was a kid. The other bales that they were talking about, those big, okay, I don't know, furry bales, whatever they were, sheep bales, they were humongous. We used to go sneak in them, maybe, you know, you do something you're not supposed to. So, you know, maybe have a couple of years, we're hiding, but literally, now that just, nobody ever touched them. Nobody ever moved them, they just saw it right into that wetland.
Thank you.
All right, is that my well, number one.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else?
One more thing. Anybody's concerned about the wells, that property gonna pay for? Well, they're gonna,
I understand.
they're intruding on us. So I'm just thinking, maybe they should pay for our tests at least once a year.
Thank you.
Sorry, but I don't know.
Appreciate your opinion.
Chew from the hip, you know?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natalie Douglas. I live at 155 Graham Ridge Road now. I've lived at 6 Graham Ridge Road and 29 Graham Ridge Road. My husband and I just bought the 155 Graham Ridge Road last year, and we have 2 sons, 4 and 4 months. So I'm 4th generation actually on Western Hills. Please reconsider this, and if I knew this, probably would have bought back in August again, so thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Nelson Detritus. I live at 60 Wildwood Circle. And I've been living here since 1984, so it's 39 years. And what I can hear tonight is everyone is concerned about what's going on with this development. I don't think it's the right thing for the smaller town. I don't think it's the right thing for the area. And people are concerned, very concerned about the wells, whatever. Those are taxpayers. This is all taxpayers. We pay our taxes. We don't want somebody to come in and take another house away. So I'm asking the commission to make the right decision. And I'll tell you, the right decision is to reject this project. Thank you.
Anyone else? We good? You got new stuff to add?
Well, this is, people that did want to speak, signed, paper saying they're against.
Okay, thank you. We'll accept that into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. One more?
We got more.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. Wait there.
I'll bring it up later.
Is there anything else? Yeah, we are going to continue this public hearing because we want to make sure that, you know, based on the information, the new information that was received, that the public also has a chance to review that as well. So we will continue this until our next, which is December 6th, right?
December 6th in this room.
In this room at 6:45. So please feel free to have a question.
I'd like to say a few things and ask a couple questions too, and then you can hold it.
So, please feel free to, continue that, and if And you know, anybody that wants to come and voice their opinion, that's fine, or write a letter and send it to Lori, land use, that would be appreciated.
What's the date?
Thank you. December sixth, the Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month in December.
Question?
And it's,
Public meeting?
it will be a public meeting, yep, at 6:45. We'll continue. Marcia?
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. I know it's getting late, but I have a few things that I wanted to say. I have a couple of questions. You know, as everybody can see, this is obviously a massive project. It's quite honestly bigger than anything I thought I would ever see proposed on this site. It's the most sensitive wetlands in Naugatuck, in my opinion. It's a huge sensitive ecosystem. So I think we're doing our due diligence by spending a lot of time on this and deliberating it and getting expert opinion. So I appreciate everybody's comments and input. There's a lot of information that's missing, obviously, on the application. We've seen that in the reviews from BNL and from Southwest. We're still waiting for more information from Southwest, and we're waiting for the applicant then to respond to all of this. I would also really like to see that study from 2006 from Delta Environmental Services. I'd like to know, you know, if the crumb or the rubber tires were addressed in that report, and if they were proposed to be remediated. I would definitely want to get that as soon as possible. And I want to know if it was a phase 1 study that was done, and if not, I would like the commission to be able to request that at a later point once we find out more information. I'm also concerned about the wildlife. There was a little bit of talk about that tonight, but they depend on this ecosystem. And at the commission, we can issue, or we can ask for a wildlife study to be done, which I would like that to happen. Southwest has also suggested that, and BNL, I believe, mentioned that as well. There are just a lot of animals that are in and out of that site. There's a lot of animals that live there and depend on the water. They depend on the cover, the trees, the shrubs. And I also have a question, I guess, I don't know if it needs to be answered tonight, but has anybody surveyed the site for vernal pools? I don't remember seeing anything about that. And then can we get some clarification on the wetlands that were mentioned that potentially are off-site, but could still be close? It's on the western side, I believe, near Mr. Rogers' property. I don't know how close that may or may not be to where the building is, but it was suggested that it might be close. Don't know. And then also, it'd be great to get some information on the shading of the buildings that somebody mentioned. I don't know if it's in there how tall the buildings are, but I would like to get that information and the potential effects on the wetlands and the upland area with the shading of buildings. I know it was mentioned in the initial presentation that the bridge would provide shading. I know Mr. Overton did talk about that, but if we could talk about any other shading on the property, that would be great. I just wanted to close with by saying that the commission, over the years since I've been on this commission, we have had a lot of concerns with this brook. I think when I first came on the commission, I don't remember the year, but Webster Bank had washed out the bridge there, had totally washed out. We walked that brook with Southwest Conservation. We've tried to find ways to improve it. I know Shirley Anderson, who lived downstream from it, had flooding. She was before this commission for a long time and meeting after meeting. So we need to protect it. And I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, that we're getting all the information we need. We're looking at all the alternatives to this, taking into account, you know, the footprint that we're leaving behind. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to the applicant and the BNL for the reports. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Commissioner, that's what I answered this question. Yes. Thank you very much.
Said some very important things, but the one thing in the end, that nobody ever said, is you're gonna be destroying the environment. If these people all live in. And we have to think very much about that. That's the people who live in the area.
We take everything very seriously. I think it's, otherwise we would. Thank you. All right, so let's go into our regular.
You gotta finish your agenda, right?
Oh, the agenda, yes, we need to finish the agenda. Everything, yeah, bring it back to, the what minutes, oh, thank you. Okay. Okay, let's go back into, I know you. Item 2. Okay, review the approval data for 20.
Madam Chair, I'd like to Madam Chair, I'd like
All in favor? Hold on one second. I'm sorry, you guys, you're kind of cleaning up, and so we're trying to finish our meeting, so thank you. This gets a little noisy. Was the lead at the last meeting, you abstained? Okay. Who was abstained? Louise abstained, thank you. And, so Brian first. And he had second. Louise abstained. All rest in favor, aye? Aye. Okay. 30 minutes approved. Very good. Okay, let's go where we did. We got something for public comment. Item 4A, the old business motion discussion regarding IW 2308, the proposed development, Long Meadow Apartments be located over multiple parcels of road. Okay, so we're going to continue this because obviously we have a lot that we've received that we need to review, and just based on everything. We'll continue that. Just make sure you just read everything. I know it's probably overload, but read that. Did you see new business? No new business? No. Okay. The correspondence that we have, 6A, Connecticut Association of Conservation, Kathy Lake, is having their annual meeting, and that is on the 11th, November 11th. It's always a really good meeting. No, wait, does anybody want to go? Yeah, does anybody want to go? It's a Saturday. I know, I would love to go as well. Would anybody like to? November 11th. It's a Saturday. Yeah, it's really good. I went one year and it was really good. I just need to know so I could sign up and pay for it. Pay for it. So if you definitely want to go, let Lori know. All right. It's like an all day thing, but it's really good. You get lunch. You get lunch, yeah. You get lunch. Is anybody going? Brian, you want to go? Did you say you want to go? You sure you want to think about it? Email me tomorrow?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, yeah, very good.
Make sure.
Sounds good. Okay.
Check the weather.
That's right. Check out the watch. Okay. B is the meeting schedule for 2024, so it's still the same. I think there was one change to it due to the holiday. Yeah. 4th of July, yeah. So I think we're good on that. So do we have to vote on that?
No.
No, it's a set thing, right?
No, sure.
Yeah, that's just our meeting schedule. 7. For our WPO report, A, application IW 2109 at 545 Church Street, Eric Workday. I have not had a chance to do anything with him this month. I know I will get out to him. Okay. B, F, IW 2008, commercial development, 0 Prospect Street, Magdi Babawi and Anzi Dwajas. I know you see, concerned about the bridge. The decking has been done, completed. Okay, so now that's solid. So it's a solid, yeah, he replaced the whole decking, the whole top, so now we will be asking him, I know he's working with Wayne. I believe he's working with Wayne to get the testing done.
Any comments from the neighborhood?
Mr. Sweet called this because he heard chainsaws, but what it was it was the state trimming the trees. Actually, they were there the exact time I went to go take a picture, so I knew it was the state trimming the trees.
Splendid was out.
Oh, okay, very good. Doing all that, okay. C is 1067 May Street, monitoring the activities within the 100-foot upper
Still nothing. I'm gonna ask her if she wants to just, contact us. We could take it off and she could contact us when she's ready.
That's good. All right, D is 393 Rubber Avenue.
They're still working on the project. As you see, the roof is going on. They've been working on that.
Okay,
Hay bales are still in the back with the, tilpins.
okay, good. E is application IWA 2303 for the addition at 707, 709
Oh, wait.
Rubber Avenue.
Right.
Yeah,
Back up. Which one did we talk about?
393 Rubber Avenue.
393 Rubber Avenue. I am going back out to Auto House once the leaves come down.
Right, okay, that's Auto House.
The next one.
Yes.
The next one is
The
the one
next
under
one
construction.
is
I was gonna say,
under construction, yeah,
right. Okay. All right, okay, F.
Full
is
deck.
The full deck, yep, and the
That's
shed
complete.
at Cobblestone Court,
Both are complete.
they're done, okay,
Done.
so we can take that one off.
Yeah.
Okay, G is 2306 for an 8x12 deck. In the area for 39 Hackett Street, John Whitkey,
Complete.
we'll take that off. Okay, 2307, the pedestrian walkway of Filling Mill Brook and Prospect Street, where I know we talked about.
We talked about that, so what he did is he changed the material. Originally, he was using, telephone poles, 4 telephone poles and building the bridge that way. Instead, he is going to use a container, shipping container, cut off both ends, have it cut back. I spoke to Bill in building. He likes this idea much better because there's building codes to go by with this. In your packet, I think I put a picture of what he wants it to look like. So that's a container, and they do use these for bridges.
Yeah, as
So
long
it
as
would
it
be
meets
the
the
same.
code and it's, gonna be sturdy and it's not gonna fall into the brook, so that's good.
It's gonna be contained.
Off, this can come off.
That was good. Ed. Good.
It's dad joke.
Correct.
Well, you were gonna monitor when the, we'll.
Oh, yeah.
We'll still monitor.
Okay, I'll leave it on.
Okay. All right, 8 administrative business, administrative report for a special permit application for a proposed church for property located at 71 Weed Drive, and it's not, applicant is not a family church. So isn't there a building there now?
There's a building there now. It's a special permit, so they do need a report from us. I have the report.
600 feet or something?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a church going into the old Citizens News office.
They're
Yeah.
not making anything new, they're just.
No.
The sign's already up, the church sign's already up.
They're just doing a.
They're already praying for us.
They are, we need it.
They meet once or twice a week.
Yeah, I saw that.
Outside work.
Did you hear taxes then?
Taxes there, yeah. B, administrative report for special permit. Application for proposed new construction for commercial business with apartment above 784 Prospect Street. Applicant is Jose Alvarez and Sandra Rivera.
That's the same thing. We have, Donald Smith is online, who's their engineer.
Oh.
What they're doing is they bought a property right across from, it's an existing house over there, so they're right next to the, what is that?
Beacon Valley Animal Hospital.
Okay, okay.
It's a small
To the
part,
right
small
of it?
parcel.
To the right of it, so
Okay.
they're,
So they're kind of like right on.
they're not near the wetlands. They have to go
They're
across
across the street.
Prospect Street, across the house. So this again is a special permit which requires a report from the, Wetlands Commission.
And this is one of the one that is like a landscaping business, right?
Landscaping business, because it's in a B2 zone with, they are gonna put an apartment on the top floor, so they would reside upstairs with their business on the first floor.
Right. So
And
it's
that's
the
allowed.
mixed use that's allowed.
Correct.
Okay,
It's a 2-person operation.
that's good.
So Donald is online. Did we need?
Does anybody have any questions, for the engineer for this?
Mr. Smith, did you have anything to say?
No, that was a wonderful public hearing, though.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, not a problem.
As quickly as possible. So,
I have the plan on my screen. If you want me to share, I can show it, or if you guys are all set.
Sure, we didn't want you to wait for nothing.
Now I gotta make him a co-host.
Okay.
So.
Don, you should be able to go ahead. I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Got it. Okay, for the record, Donald Smith Jr., professional engineer with an office at 56 Greenwood Circle in Seymour, representing the applicant Jose Alvarez and Sandra Rivera. As Laurie had indicated, this site is next door up the hill to Beacon Valley Animal Hospital, the animal hospital right here on the left-hand side. There's an existing driveway right of way next to the parcel that goes up to a residence in the back. This is only less than a half-acre parcel that was created back in 1940. So it's very limited. We have the right to use the existing driveway. So we'll be constructing the septic system up on the top of the hill. There's a steep slope on a portion of that. That slope will remain, and we'll have the 26 by 32 foot building down here on the bottom. That's pretty much all flattened out already. A couple of parking spaces and galleys to accommodate the water quality volume from the roof and driveway area. And that drainage system then ties into the state drainage system out in Route 62 or 68, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. No question?
No, any comment?
No comments from the township.
Good on.
It's going for his, it's going for his.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're good on that. Okay. All right, I know, you're probably all disappointed, but is there a motion to adjourn?
Please, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, we've adjourned at 10:08 PM. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.